Your views throughout the programme. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. We're getting to all of that here in London and in Paris after your headlines with Tatiana.
Tom, thank you. The top stories, as you've been hearing, Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today if they can, after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. At least 3 train lines were targeted, affecting nearly 1 million people. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. Footage can be seen of Team GB athletes also being caught up in the delays catching the Eurostar. The family at the centre of a video that appears to show a Greater Manchester police officer kicking a suspect in the head are appealing for calm.
Justice, no peace, no racist police.
Hundreds of people were seen protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after 3 officers were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault in the Manchester Airport car park, which happened before the event seen in the video. That included a female police officer who suffered a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. Retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville told GB News that those speculating online and in the media are not helping the situation.
Just whips up a storm. It isn't good enough to say things like that. If we're going to come out with comments like that, let's have some facts and evidence. And this is where we could have facts and evidence, because as an airport, it's covered by CCTV. It could take months, to review all that footage. But the facts are they could do the main bits of it within a number of days. My expertise was dealing with CCTV. So if you get the key pieces of footage, really, you could have the most of it dealt with within a few days, and this is what it needs to be doing to stop all this speculation and trouble.
Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. He says the Tories should avoid veering too far to the right and focus on unity.
Also got to go deeper into the centre ground. We've got to become that party that has a broad appeal for competency in government, that channels aspiration, opportunity, all of the things that conservatism has traditionally been about, and for which there will always be a strong appetite amongst people if we can get the right platform together. And I believe that I am the leader that can bring us together as a party to fashion a unified programme that can appeal broadly. That will take time and a huge amount of work, but I believe I've shown in my track record that that's just the sort of thing that I can do.
In other news, the regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose. That's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings, which are affecting its ability to monitor health and social care institutions. The CQC inspects around 90,000 services, including hospitals, GP practices, care homes and dental surgeries. The regulator says it accepts the findings, but Wes Streeting told GB News he's stunned.
There are, cases of hospitals not being inspected for over a decade, a care provider that hadn't been inspected since 2015, and even the ratings that are published and that we use as the public to make choices about where to receive health or care, some of those are frankly bogus because of the way in which they've been put together based on either partial inspections or piecing together more recent inspections with historic verdicts on those health and care providers.
Now, in Australia, doctors are working hard to reattach a surfer's leg after he was attacked by a shark. Kai Mackenzie, who's 23 years old, was surfing near Port Macquarie, about 250 miles from Sydney, when he was bitten by a 3-metre-long great white shark. He managed to catch a wave to shore where an off-duty police officer helped stem his bleeding. In an extraordinary twist, his severed leg later washed ashore and was put on ice by a quick-thinking local. Doctors are now working to see whether it can be reattached. And finally, to the United States, where Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president. In a roughly 1 minute long video, a private phone call can be seen between the former president and his wife Michelle Obama with Ms. Harris. Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to endorse the vice president and says he'd do everything to get her into the Oval Office. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past midday. Now, the Olympics are under attack as the French high-speed rail network is left paralysed following a series of arson attacks in an apparent bid to cause chaos ahead of this evening's opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics. In what is being described as coordinated sabotage, signals along tracks have been set fire to, cables cut and set alight, triggering mass cancellations as Paris prepares to host 7,500 athletes and more than 300,000 spectators. Well, I'm joined in the studio with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, this is like something we've never seen before.
Yeah, there's no doubt. As the statement says, it was a coordinated series of attacks targeting specifically those signal boxes, those cables that were cut and set alight as well. Whoever carried out the attacks knew what they were doing to cause maximum disruption, because clearly if you don't have the signal and electronic infrastructure there, you can't send trains along those lines. Now, the authorities are trying to divert some of the high-speed trains onto the slower tracks, but that is inevitably having an impact on the number of trains they can run on this service. 800,000 at last count was the number of rail customers that they believe are being impacted by this. Eurostar, for instance, is advising people not to turn up for trains because of the huge queues and backlogs that are building at the Eurostar terminals in the UK.
Now, we're looking at live pictures of workers on the TGV network trying to fix these signals that have been sabotaged, not just in one location, but in 3 locations that were attacked. And I believe there was a 4th, but the attackers failed in that 4th attempt. Yeah,
that was disrupted, so that didn't result in any disruption to that particular area. But the net effect of the coordinated attacks is to pretty much cripple a significant part of that infrastructure. And yes, they're working in terms of the emergency repairs, as we can see, but that will take some time. And what you've got at the moment, Tom, are hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are heading to Paris for the Olympic events, and in particular the opening ceremony, which in itself, just the opening ceremony, the ticketed individuals along the River Seine, it's going to be 300,000, 10,500 athletes. It's a huge logistical and security challenge for the authorities in Paris.
Now, of course, there was speculation in terms of what was it deemed to be earlier this morning. But in the last hour, the Prime Minister of France, Gabriel Attal, has released this statement. Early this morning, acts of sabotage were carried out in a prepared and coordinated manner on SNCF installations. Our intelligence services and law enforcement are mobilised to find and punish the perpetrators of these criminal acts. Very clear there from the French authorities, this was sabotage, this was coordinated. Who's to blame?
Well, I think key uppermost in their thinking, according to senior sources in France, is Russia. Of course, their athletes banned from the competition under a Russian flag. The French president said just a few months back that he had no doubt that Russia was intent on disrupting the Olympics. They've already just in recent weeks been accused of launching a massive campaign on social media and online to try to put out disinformation about the potential security risks around that event. There's no doubt, though, it is going to be a huge security challenge, because this event, the Paris Olympics, differs from quite a number of other Olympic events that we've seen in recent years. If you look at London, for instance, or Rio, a lot of the events take place in an Olympic park that they can control much more easily. They can put a sterile cordon around that. In France, they've decided to do it differently, and they've scattered the events out around Paris itself, and that means you need much more in the way of resources to guard multiple sites, and that's why we've seen 45,000 police and gendarmes that have been drafted in to Paris, 10,000 soldiers, 22,000 private security personnel as well. It is going to be a logistical and security nightmare to try to ensure that the events go off without a hitch.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much for that overview. Let's cross now live to Paris and join GB News reporter Sophie Reaper. Sophie, my goodness, what is the mood on the ground there? It seems that this was meant to be a day of celebration and is now a day of security nightmare.
Well, Tom, it's been a bit of a rough morning here in Paris. The weather hasn't been ideal. It was meant to be sunny and bright today, and actually it's really rather gloomy. The atmosphere is still buoyant, though. People are still enjoying the celebrations. There's plenty of people starting to pour in. I think we should just acknowledge my background right here behind me. I mean, could you ask for anything perhaps more Parisian or French than the Arc de Triomphe itself? Now you will see going round here the sheer volume of police and security, and this isn't even realistically where the opening ceremony is going to be taking place. That's down the road at the Seine, near the Eiffel Tower and the Trocadero. That is where the opening ceremony will end this evening. 10,500 athletes will make their way down the Seine, all the way down a 6-kilometre route to the Trocadero, and that is where Paris 2024 will officially commence from. So it's all very exciting. People from all over the world. Of course, there are 206 different nations that compete in the Olympics, so plenty of different countries being represented here in Paris. People will be pouring in. We're expecting 300,000 people in the city centre to take in the opening ceremony this evening. Of course, now with the issues on the high-speed rail network, that number may be reduced, but I'm sure people, anyone in and around Paris, anyone in and around France, people all over the world will be tuning in to the opening ceremony tonight, and that's just the start of it. We've got a few weeks of events yet to come, so all very exciting, and we'll be bringing you all the latest from Paris throughout the programme.
Sophie, we're hearing that 1 in 4 Eurostar trains are now cancelled, not just today, but throughout the weekend. This is going to have a real impact on Brits. And we've seen the queues at Dover as well. Perhaps many people from this country who would like to be there for that opening ceremony simply won't make it.
Well, it is a disaster for British fans. Team GB kicking off their campaign in earnest tomorrow. We did compete in the archery yesterday, but that is always ahead of the Olympic ceremony. The official events will begin as of tomorrow, so the likes of the diving, the swimming, the gymnastics, they'll all begin in earnest tomorrow with some very high-profile British athletes competing in them. There's even going to be some medal events that the Brits are going to have their fingers crossed for tomorrow. So this is truly a disaster. If you're a British fan and you're heading over for those events, and like you say, the Eurostar's cancelled, there's huge queues at Dover, there's obviously going to be huge pressure now placed on our airports, you could find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation if you're heading over to Paris to support Team GB.
And a huge security scare, because this, of course, is the first ever opening ceremony for an Olympic Games that isn't contained in a stadium. It's a procession down the river in the open streets of Paris. I mean, clearly a lot of police about you, Sophie, but there must be a great deal of trepidation now after these coordinated attacks.
Well, President Macron has said they always knew that this was going to be a risk, and they have got plans B and C ready to go if that were to be the case. You mentioned the police and the security. I think we can just pan around. There are police like these guys here on every single street corner, and that is everywhere in Paris. That's not just at the major landmarks. That's every single street corner. You can probably hear the sirens around us. They are incessant here in Paris. There is no respite. There you go. You can see police motorbikes going. That's constant at the moment in Paris. So I think they will be taking major precautions. Like you say, usually we're familiar with opening ceremonies being inside stadia. We remember the 2008 in Beijing, that incredible spectacle that people talked about for years afterwards. We remember London 2012. That was amazing, wasn't it? With James Bond jumping out of a plane with the Queen. But the thing that they all have in common thus far is that they've been inside a stadium. That today, they are breaking all the rules here in France. But as you say, there will be trepidation after this morning's events, because who knows? The security is incredibly tight. It's incredibly difficult to get around Paris, but there will still be those nerves there, I'm sure, for the French Olympic Committee.
Well, Sophie Rieper, thank you very much. We'll be back with you, of course, throughout the programme as the situation develops. Let's cross now to St Pancras International in London, where Olympics-bound trains have been cancelled and disrupted. Let's speak with GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, what's the situation on the ground there?
It's one of confusion, but there's some optimism. I think as you say, we're standing just outside the station, and we've been speaking to members of the public who've been entering, and some of them say, yeah, we've been told that our first train is cancelled, but they're hopeful that a conventional train, rather than one of the faster Eurostars, will be able to pick them up and save them. I'm not so sure. I think they go inside and find out the bad news. As you say, 1 in 4 Eurostar trains has now been cancelled throughout the weekend, so there's going to be massive disruption. And already you can see, or if you once you head inside, there are massive queues. I mean, it's not packed, but it is definitely getting more and more congested. Now, actually, as I say, we spoke to some members of the public, and I think we can roll that clip now and show you what they had to say about their journeys.
Basically, we heard there's some vandalism on the way to Paris. We got a message saying that we should change our train tickets. But we've come today because we think that we can probably go on the same train again and have about a 60-minute delay on the train.
I got a message from the Eurostar asking if we'd like to cancel. Yeah, but we're not going to.
You're hoping you're just going to pop on and carry on as usual?
I hope so. Well, I don't know. I haven't gone inside yet.
We came all the way here to support our team. We're supposed to go to the opening ceremony, so.
We are. Our daughter's participating in the Olympics, so we're trying to get to Paris, yeah.
Oh, really? What event is she participating in?
She's a rower. She's in the women's double scull.
Oh, fantastic. When's her first event?
Tomorrow.
Well, let's hope you get there in time.
Yeah.
All right, best of luck.
We'll get there. Thank you.
So, as I say, I think you can see that the realisation is dawning on people as they arrive that actually this is a serious problem. Again, 1 in 4 Eurostar trains cancelled, so there will be a backlog. The ceremony itself begins at 6:30 tonight. There are several people in that footage, and others I spoke to are clearly hoping to get there in advance of that. Hopefully they'll make it. It's currently just after 12:15, so they have some time. But as I say, with a lot of cancellations already, it might be tricky.
Well, Adam Cherry, thank you so much for speaking to people on the ground there. We'll be coming back to you, of course, throughout the programme as the situation develops there at St Pancras International. Now, coming up, a second night of chaos in Manchester as police stations are pelted with eggs. We'll have the very latest after this.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, "I think he'll come home," explaining, "I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry," suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 12. Now live to France, where we can see engineers are continuing to work desperately on these tracks of the high-speed rail network. In 3 places, this crucial network has been taken out by arson attacks, coordinated arson attacks in the early hours of this morning. Now, there was one arson attack that was diverted, that was prevented on the southern line into Paris. But from the east, from the west and from the north, there has been what can only be described as successful coordinated attacks. No word yet on the perpetrators, but clearly this is throwing travel plans into chaos in France. 1 in 4 Eurostar trains from London are now cancelled throughout the weekend, and also 800,000 people within France expected to travel to Paris will see their service disrupted. It's hard to overstate how much of a nightmare this is on the eve of what was supposed to be a pretty unique opening ceremony, the first opening ceremony in Olympic history that wasn't confined to a stadium, that instead was a procession along the Seine through the centre of Paris. Well, questions will now be being raised about the security of that procession. How safe are the athletes, and will there be more disruption to come? Clearly, so far, these 3 crucial train lines from the east, from the west and from the north severely disrupted. But as I say, we're looking now at those who are trying to fix what has gone on, the signalling that has been sabotaged. So we're looking there at those working on that national TGV line, trying to get that back up and running. Of course, we're going to be in Paris throughout the programme, joined by Sophie Reaper, who is live outside the Arc de Triomphe. We'll be joining Sophie in just a moment's time. But back in Blighty, a service remembering the sacrifice made by the bombing crews during the Second World War has been held in Lincoln. 58,000 men and women died, both serving and supporting the most perilous role in the Air Force. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has this report.
At the International Bomber Command Centre in Lincoln, a day dedicated to honouring its namesake. Roy Briggs risked everything flying in Bomber Command. Now aged 99, the wireless operator had one of the most dangerous jobs in the war, bombing Berlin.
I couldn't believe it, really. I thought, is this me or am I dreaming that a 20-year-old boy from the back streets of Battersea was flying over Germany in a Lancaster? I've got 3 old-age pensioners looking after me.
Marking Bomber Command Day, Roy joins some of the last remaining veterans who flew the deadliest of missions. But toward the end of the war, dropping food, not bombs, became the task.
Before we took off, we heard that Mr. Churchill was going to make a statement in the Commons at 3:30. And we dropped food and we were on our way back. And I tuned into the BBC and I heard him say, tomorrow will be VE Day.
This is the 4th Bomber Command Day, created to preserve the memory of the people who served in the most perilous place, the sky. Some 58,000 people died serving with Bomber Command. Here at the centre, their names are included on memorial walls, the setting for a service remembering their role securing peace. Nikki Vanderdrift is Chief Executive.
We need to remember that all efforts should be made to protect peace and freedom, and every day those in the military are fighting that fight for us.
With members from 62 countries, the Allies fighting in Bomber Command took the war to the heart of Germany. Colonel Jonathan Bouchard is from the Canadian Air Force. This year, it commemorates 100 years of service.
The contribution that our people did standing next to allies and partners back then is to be remembered.
Nations once more coming together, not to defend, but to remember. Will Hollis, GB News in Lincoln.
Well, thank you to Will for that moving report. So important to remember those who fought, those who served, and those who died trying to protect our freedom. And I suppose it does make you think about how perilous our freedom is when we see attacks like we saw in Paris in the early hours of this morning. Just against infrastructure this time, but so many questions to be asked about precisely who coordinated these attacks. Some suggestions that it's Russia. Of course, there have been question marks over Russia's operations in the North Sea, where they're flying their planes, where there are communications infrastructures, to some extent, which are just narrow wires across an ocean. How safe are we when infrastructure is being targeted in the way we saw in France? Some big questions about our national security, our communications infrastructure, our transport infrastructure, and indeed our energy infrastructure too. Are we entering a more dangerous world? Well, if we are, it's time that we thought more about our veterans. It's time we thought more about our armed forces. It's time we remembered the sacrifice of those who fought in the last war, of Bomber Command, of those memorials that become so much more important as the world becomes ever more dangerous. Very important to reflect upon. Well, we're going to be back in Paris, we're going to be back in France, we're going to be getting to the bottom of what precisely is going on today with Sophie Reaper. That's after your headlines with Tatiana.
Tom, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories. Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today if they can after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. The Prime Minister is urging people to take note of the warnings, with 1 in 4 services expected to be axed today. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it called a massive attack. Hundreds of people were seen protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after a video emerged appearing to show an officer kicking a suspect in the head. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault which happened before the event seen in the video which has been shared online. The police watchdog has launched an investigation. Mel Stride has become the fourth Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. He says the Tories should avoid veering too far to the right and focus on unity. The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose. That's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings that are hampering its ability to keep a check on health and social care institutions. The CQC inspects everything from hospitals and GP practices through to care homes and dental surgeries, covering 90,000 different services. The body says it accepts the findings in full. Wes Streeting told GB News he was stunned. And in the US, Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. In a roughly 1 minute long video, a private phone call can be seen between the former president and his wife, Michelle Obama, with Ms. Harris. Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to endorse the vice president and said he'd do everything to get her into the Oval Office. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, with most of the showers across the north, a largely fine day across the south. Low pressure is dominating things, sitting up between the UK and Iceland. The closer you are to the low, the more showers you're going to get through the day today. So plenty of them coming into western Scotland. Further south, many places across southern England, particularly southeast and East Anglia, will stay dry. But the showers could be on the heavy side as they zip through across parts of Scotland. Plenty of showers developing through the afternoon, especially across Northern Ireland, and some scattered across northern England. In the sunny spells across the east, temperatures getting into the 20s, maybe even the mid-20s in and around the capital. We'll see more heavy showers developing through the afternoon and into the evening across parts of Scotland, so becoming more widespread here, some developing across to the northeast. So if you're travelling this Friday evening, just bear in mind, particularly across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England, you're going to catch these heavy downpours. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you've got a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. The showers are much more scattered further south, but there will be some for Wales, the Midlands, maybe the odd one for southwest England too. But as I mentioned, from East Anglia down to the southeast, most places staying dry through the afternoon and into the evening. As we go through the evening, the showers further north will also tend to fade away. So for many places, it will be a dry night. The winds will ease a little bit across Scotland and Northern Ireland too. We'll see a few more showers developing into southwest Scotland by the end of the night. But for many, clear skies, a little cooler than quite a few recent nights as well. On to the weekend, and Saturday again a mixture of sunshine and showers. The main focus for showers likely to be northwest England initially, southern Scotland, but we'll see some heavier showers developing across Wales and perhaps into the Midlands, possibly the odd rumble of thunder along with northeast England. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and again mostly fine across East Anglia and the southeast. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Northbound on the M1, slow traffic to an earlier broken down vehicle at junction 29 for Chesterfield and Mansfield. On the northbound side of the M5, queue in traffic in 2 lanes closed to an accident from Worcester at 7 through to Worcester at junction 6. Very slow there as a result. Heading to the West Midlands, the southbound side of the M6 very slow to an earlier accident at 10 for Wolverhampton. Congestion is to 10A for the M54 interchange. On the westbound side of the M4, slow traffic to an earlier broken down vehicle from Cheveley and Newbury at 13 to Hungerford at 14. There's also ongoing roadworks adding to the delays. And westbound on the M4, it's now cleared at Bath junction 18. An earlier vehicle needing a tyre change saw a lane closure. And that's your very latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 36 minutes past midday. And amongst the concerning scenes in France as a result of that sabotage on the French rail network, despite that, excitement is still growing as Paris is to host the Olympic opening ceremony this evening. We're going to jump back to Paris now and join GB News reporter Sophie Reaper. Sophie, you're outside the Arc de Triomphe. What's going on?
Well, aside from some very high security, the atmosphere is pretty brilliant here in Paris as we build up to that opening ceremony this evening. But looking after that, we have got some real exciting events to come up. And to talk a little bit about that, I'm joined now by my fabulous guest, former Olympian, Mark Foster. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the programme. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well.
Yes?
If it hadn't been for you, I would not have seen the Champs-Elysees yet.
No, well, there we go. We like to do our bit here on GB News. We are the People's Channel, after all. Let's talk a little bit about Paris. What have you made of it so far? What we've seen of it? Obviously, there's only been a few events kind of started. We've seen a bit of the rugby, a bit of the handball, that kind of thing. What have you made of Paris as a city? How's it coping with the Olympics?
The interesting thing for me was, when I've been in a couple of days now, I've got accredited, went out to the swimming pool and saw the venue, field of play for swimming, so to speak, but it seemed quite quiet. In general terms. I mean, I'm used to, obviously, I go in and out of London a lot, and with the tourists just without the Olympics, it's manic, and I haven't seen that here. I mean, you're in a spot at the end of the Champs-Elysees where it is kind of busy, but it's still not manic. I went down last night to the river and took a walk where the opening ceremony is going to be, and it was extremely quiet. I know because of a lot of security, but I don't know how many French and how many spectators are going to be there for the opening ceremony. I presume it's going to be phenomenal, and it's going to be mad with a lot of people. But at the moment, it seems very quiet. It's almost like waiting for the torch to be lit.
That's the perfect metaphor, of course, with the opening ceremony this evening. First ever outdoors opening ceremony. Of course, you competed yourself in 5 Olympics, that's correct, isn't it? 5 Olympics, so you'll have never seen an outdoor opening ceremony, given this is the first one ever. What do you make of that as an idea? Risky?
I think it is. I think the backdrop's going to be amazing, and it'll be interesting to see how well they pull it off in a sense, but it's tricky sort of managing it and organising it from an organisational point of view, but managing it from a security point of view. Historically, you go into a stadium, very easy to manage. A lot of big events happen in stadiums, and security-wise, it's very easy to manage it. Being on the Seine itself, with the boats coming along, I don't know how far the stretch of water is, but to try and contain it and make it run smoothly and safely, it's going to be very, very difficult. But it should be, if it's done well, it's going to be spectacular. But in my mind, it's a little bit of a risk, but it should be phenomenal.
Well, we will see. It's not long to go now. Only, 5 hours? So we'll be seeing very soon. Now, you, of course, are one of Britain's best ever swimmers. 8 world records for Mark Foster. Absolutely incredible.
Let's talk. Good at remembering numbers, by the way.
That's all I've got. Let's talk a bit about how Team GB are going to fare in the pool. What are you thinking? We were speaking just before we came on air. Our boys, they are superstars, aren't they? What do you think? How many are we going to get?
Medals in general, I was sort of totted up, and there's no guarantees with any of this. I think we could get near 8 medals across the board. That's going to be predominantly coming from the men's.
In the swimming, we should add, just in the swimming.
In the swimming itself,
yes.
Yeah, otherwise Team GB's had a nightmare. But just in the pool itself, in the swimming side of the pool, not including diving or anything else. Men's really, really strong. I'm going to put Adam Peaty down there as favourite in 100 breaststroke. Men's 4x200 freestyle with the world record holders and current reigning champions on the 4x2 in the Olympics. Ben Proud's going to go in number 1, stroke number 2 in the world in the 50 freestyle. We don't have so much depth in the women's side. We've got it in the men's side. On the women's side, Freya Corbett, possibly 400 individual medley.
Yeah.
And Hagrid Evans, in the 100-metre breaststroke. I think they've got some outside chances. But across the board, if I put us in 8 medals, including relays, the mixed relays and the men's relays, I think we could probably get to 8 medals. It should be a dual meet between America and Australia. For the first time, the Australian team is as strong as the Americans. Never seen that before. So between those, they'll go at it in loggerheads, and then some other medals will get spread around the other nations. Sarah Sjostrom, world's fastest swimmer on the 50 freestyle. She should win, and there's been a lot of that today.
Lots of that. Right. Let's talk a little bit about Team GB as a whole, of course. We've been predicted at 66 medals. Of course, there were 64 in Tokyo, 67 our best performance ever in Rio. How do you think we're going to fare? I think this could be our best ever. I'm saying 68. That's my estimate. Because I just think that Paris, outside of London, this is the closest to a home games we can get, essentially.
Yes.
And I think that plays a big part.
Yes.
So I am hopeful. But I want to hear your thoughts.
Time zones obviously play a part when you go to a different part of the world, and I'm not just saying jet lag because they go a few weeks before, obviously, but you just feel here you're very, very connected to the UK, so to speak. Time frame on the same time frame. They'd have probably been, a lot of them would have had their training camps in the UK and came straight here. Like historically with Tokyo, they've gone to a holding camp in Hong Kong or China or Australia or something. So it's going to feel more like there is a jet lag side of it, and also. Oh, that sounds stupid. Different types of food. And I know in the Olympic
I said this earlier to my cameraman about food, and he didn't believe me, but the margins are so tight, aren't they? That even just a tiny shift in diet.
When races and medals are won and lost by hundredths of seconds, every tiny little bit increment's going to make a difference. So the more at home they feel, the more connected they feel. I think a lot more friends and family will come across. I think there'll be a bigger GB contingent here in the fans. It all plays a part, and we're talking about hundreds of seconds and those medals. You should say from 67 to 68, it's only one medal. You may be right. It might be 70.
Well, 70 would be, but no, we don't want 50, absolutely not. Obviously, as well, we're looking ahead now to LA in 2028. We heard the other day that our training camp is going to be at Stanford University. What do we think going into that? What does Team GB of the future look like, do you think?
I can only talk in swimming terms.
Okay.
And we've had a good European Junior Championships this year, which is 17, 18-year-old men, 15, 16, 17-year-old women. And we've got some good swimmers coming through, as have all the other nations, don't get me wrong, but it's sort of keeping them in the pool and fast-tracking them to success. So I'm going to give you an example of Rebecca Adlington. 2004 Olympic Games in Athens. She didn't take part, but Team GB and British Swimming in particular took her to the holding camps and took her over to Athens to see what it was like. She didn't compete, then she went home, but she kind of got a little bit of an experience. So your first Olympic Games is always difficult for anybody. So you predominantly find that the athletes that do the best have been there before and had a little bit of experience. So,
experience is the key word.
Absolutely, but we're very good at giving people that experience without actually having to be there. So I don't know. Swimming's in a good state.
Brilliant. Mark Foster, thank you so much for joining. It's so brilliant to hear your opinion. Of course, yeah. Like I said, keep saying the security is very, very high here in Paris. Thank you so much for joining us. Brilliant to hear from you. There we go. You've heard it here. Potentially 8 medals in the pool, potentially 70 medals overall. That would be a treat, wouldn't it? Well, there we are. Plenty to look forward to here in Paris over the coming days and weeks.
Look forward to totting up those medal totals. Thank you very much, Sophie. Speaking there to former Olympic swimmer Mark Foster. Well, let's go back to those live pictures in outer France, of course. Rail workers desperately trying to get lines back up and running. 3 different positions on the so-called TGV network. This one we're looking at is in northern France. They have been struck. There's been a coordinated line of attack. There was an attempted 4th attack that was foiled to the south of Paris, but these attacks came from the west, from the east and from the north on the signalling infrastructure for the high-speed rail network in Paris. The French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, has said that early this morning acts of sabotage were carried out in a prepared and coordinated manner on SNCF installations. That's the high-speed rail network. We can see on our screens where to the west, to the east and to the north, those attacks were successful. This graphic from Le Monde newspaper. To the south, on that southern line, an unsuccessful attack. But clearly here, coordination. We just don't know who is responsible. We'll bring you any updates as and when we get them. Now, on the way, a second night of chaos in Manchester as police stations are pelted with eggs. What on earth is going on? I'll be joined by a former detective superintendent after this.
GB News Breakfast. every day from 6 a.m.
Khloe Kardashian has come under fire after posting a picture of her 6-year-old daughter wearing a full face of makeup.
Yeah, the reality TV star said the youngster was participating in a dance recital and that wasn't an everyday occurrence.
So this morning we're asking, is it ever OK to let children wear makeup?
Well, joining us now is journalist Julie Cook. So, Julie, it's a child wearing full rouge, bright red lipstick, hair tied back, looking very, very stylised, very much, I think, like a young adult. Is this really the sort of thing we should be doing with small children?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine. I mean, first of all, in Khloe Kardashian's case, it was a dance recital, so it was very much a kind of performance element to it. She said herself in her post, it wasn't something they do every day. She was taking part in a dance activity. So, you know, I think she's vindicated on that front. But I've let my daughter play with makeup since she was 3. When she was 3, she showed a distinct interest in my makeup palettes, going through my stuff. She's 10 now, and while I don't let her wear a full face like a drag queen, I do let her wear, you know, a bit of mascara on a weekend if she wants to. I don't see any harm in it.
Clearly, if you're a child of a Kardashian who's paid millions of dollars to endorse cosmetics, you know, that's part of the fabric of their family. My concern, though, Julie, is putting those pictures on social media where people can see them. We live in an age now where, you know, wrong-uns are scouring the internet all the time.
A lot of girls do enjoy putting makeup on. It's almost like a self-expression thing. It's like painting on a canvas. They're just trying to be a bit artistic. I don't think it's necessarily as sort of sinister as we're making out. And I think as long as you're not posting pictures everywhere or putting them at risk of harm, I don't see any danger.
The People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 48 minutes past 12. Now, a second night of protests break out in Manchester as anger continues to boil over a police officer's use of apparent violence during an airport arrest. Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham called for calm after Rochdale Police Station was egged and attacked. Now, let's remind ourselves of what caused this outrage in the first place, with a warning that some people may find these images distressing. Here is the footage from Manchester Airport. As you can see, the footage appears to show an officer kicking and stamping on a man's face. Well, Greater Manchester Police have now suspended the officer in question. But of course, this is just a small element of what we understand to be a much, much longer confrontation, the police say involving a lot of violence towards 3 officers who ended up in hospital. Well, joining me now is the former detective superintendent with the Met, Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, thank you so much for joining us. This is a very tricky situation, of course, for many people observing it, because, yes, we've seen a tiny slice of this, but it just doesn't look good.
Well, no, it doesn't not look good. It looks absolutely disgraceful and shameful for that officer, the same officer who stamped and kicked on the head of a young man that had already been tasered, then went on further to assault another man who was compliant, kicked him to the floor. And as I understand it, at some point, he also pepper sprayed another young man who was standing there. There was a conversation, but certainly there were no commands of any sort. He literally shook his spray bottle and sprayed him. So it's not just a little tricky situation. It's an absolutely horrific situation for Greater Manchester Police.
But looking at this, we only see what happened in the aftermath. Of course, these were firearms officers. The police say that they needed to be sure that people were incapacitated because these were, in the words of the police, violent individuals who had assaulted 3 officers who needed to call for backup. 3 officers ended up in hospital. I mean, surely, before we rush to judgment on any of this, we need to see the full context. Surely we need to see what happened with the apparent violent thuggishness of the people that were then incapacitated.
Well, let's just be very clear on 2 things here, first of all. First of all, 3 officers were assaulted. We don't actually know the extent of the injuries. However, the fact is any emergency officer or person that is subjected to any kind of assault, those perpetrators need to be brought to justice. Totally support that. Secondly, these are firearms officers, as you say. These are elite trained firearms officers who have specialist training, who know how to deal with incredibly volatile situations, including terroristic situations. And in respect of the thugs that committed those injuries on the police officers, they need to be dealt with. There is no evidence at this stage to suggest that those individuals that were in that video footage, because this is an investigation, are the same people that inflicted the assault on any officer. As you say, it is a complex investigation and there is a number of video footage, evidence, witnesses that need to be spoken to. So let's not start apportioning blame to those that are lying on the floor, but let's be very, very clear on one thing. I know as a critical incident command officer, firearms officer, that this level of training of kicking somebody in the face when they've been subjected already to being incapacitated is not part of any kind of training, as I understand it. So let's just be very clear on that.
I suppose a lot will rest on to what extent these officers genuinely thought that someone was restrained or otherwise. It looks like, although they're on the floor, they're not restrained. Were there fears over grabbing any sort of firearm? I don't know. But what do you make of these protests that we've now seen for a second night in Rochdale and elsewhere in Greater Manchester, some targeting the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham?
Yeah, look, there's always going to be an element of people that will come along with their own agenda. I do not condone any kind of violence towards anybody at these protests, whichever type of protests they are. I totally support the communities to come out and have their voices heard. This is a really concerning issue. This isn't an issue that just concerns one section of the community. This concerns the wider public. The public in general are mortified by what they've seen. This could have been somebody's child, brother, uncle, sister, a mum, auntie that was subjected to that kind of violence by that particular officer. And yes, you're right, the officer needs to justify his actions. I'm not saying, you know, it's not for me to say. He needs to justify his actions, why he felt it was necessary, was it proportionate, and was the right course of action taken. However, what I'd also say is it's really, really important that they maintain a sense of calm and peace. They need community leaders to work with the police in order to maintain that calm. I know that from what community leaders are saying, there has been some real inroads in terms of community cohesion from many sections of the community. So it's not helpful when people are throwing eggs at the police station or they're targeting Andy Burnham. I think he's given some very well-balanced interviews and statements, and I think he is genuinely concerned. He's also said that there are a number of factors to consider in this overall matter, but he totally supports the suspension of that particular officer, having seen a significant amount of footage.
Yes, importantly, he hasn't rushed to judgment, particularly around this allegation of racism, which seems to be the heavy word deployed by the crowds protesting now. Is there anything to suggest that there was racism at play here?
Oh, I think it has to be a factor that has to be considered. When you consider Black Asian people are far more likely to be subjected to stop and search, they're far more likely to be tasered, they're far more likely to be subjected to having handcuffs placed on them. So I think race does need to take a consideration. You know, has there been racial profiling here? Has there been an unconscious bias element from any particular officer there? An investigation will determine the facts of this, and those officers will need to answer and be held to account for why they took the action that they did.
3 police officers had to go to prison for the beating they took from these people.
Hospital, you mean?
Why does race play into that?
Well, 3 people have been taken to hospital, not to prison. 3 officers were injured. Okay, and as we understand it at the moment, one has had her nose broken and 2 officers were injured. We don't know anything more other than the statement that Greater Manchester put out. And actually, I think Greater Manchester need to come out and actually give an update on those officers' injuries. The members of the public are concerned about them. I would like to know that they're okay and that they're doing okay. But the fact is, by not giving out any information, they're fueling far more disinformation that's coming out on social media.
Yeah,
and,
I think you're right. There needs to be a lot more information here. We need to see a lot more context. Well, Shadnam Chowdhury, really appreciate your time on this issue. Thanks for joining us. Coming up next, much more on Paris.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
Well, I'm joined now by royal biographer and former royal photographer Ian Lloyd. Ian,
hello, Jacob.
Thank you
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be great, isn't it? The opportunity to go around and see where the King comes onto the balcony from. Really interesting insight to how Buckingham Palace works.
It's exciting. I went yesterday, there was a press preview, and the thing that struck me first of all is that if you're the King and or the late Queen and you're on the balcony, you can't see the Mall. I mean, we all see people coming down from the top, you know, thousands of people crowding in towards Buckingham Palace. They can't see it because of this great monument to Queen Victoria called the Queen Victoria Memorial, or they call it the wedding cake, but it blocks the view. So apparently the King has a TV in there, and the late Queen did as well. So what they do is they when they're waiting to come on, they're watching the TV to see how the crowd's getting nearer the palace. And the other thing that struck me is when we were on it looking down, is you can actually see individual faces in the crowd out there, because we looked out, you know. So they do get a good view of what's happening directly underneath the palace, you know.
So they can see individuals. So if there's a friendly face in the crowd, they can see that person and possibly even wave. But they can't see that enormous mass of people you get at the big events that goes back towards Admiralty Arch.
The other thing I learned is there's a great historical link, because the person that put the east wing on the palace, because it was originally 3 sides, and Queen Victoria had, of course, 9 children, so they had to build a 4th side for all the nurseries and things. Edward Blord was the architect, but the master builder was Thomas Cubitt.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Friday, the 26th of July. I'm Tom Harwood, live in London.
And I'm Sophie Reaper. It's 2 o'clock here in Paris. Olympics under attack.
Olympics under attack. A coordinated series of apparent arson attacks have paralysed high-speed rail lines just hours before the citywide opening ceremony. Almost 1 million passengers are affected, with disruptions set to last for days. We're live on the ground. And the effects are not just in France, but in the UK as well, as 1 in 4 Eurostar trains are to be cancelled today and over the weekend. We'll hear from people affected. Plus, chaos in Manchester for a second night as police stations are pelted with eggs and tram lines blocked following the suspension of a police officer over a video appearing to show police brutality. But is there more to it?
With us now.
Well, throughout the show, we'll be crossing across to Sophie, of course. Sophie, what is the atmosphere like in Paris?
Well, I can tell you one thing, Tom. The weather has certainly improved a lot, and I think that is improving people's mood. This morning, while we were along the Seine with the beautiful Eiffel Tower in the background, the weather was absolutely dismal. But now, not to jinx us, but it feels like the sun is starting to shine a little bit. It's warm on my skin, and it is dry. So we will take it for now. As for the atmosphere, it's a little bit quiet right now. As you can see behind me, there is a constant police presence going through the Arc de Triomphe. However, this isn't where the action is. Tonight, when the opening ceremony is taking place, 6:30 French time, 5:30 if you're watching over in the UK, the action will all be on the Seine. And the reason for that is that this is the first time ever an Olympics will have their opening ceremony outdoors. It's not going to be in a stadium like we traditionally would see. Instead, they will start at the Bridge Austerlitz, 6 kilometres away. 10,500 athletes will be piled on board around 100 boats, and they will make their way from there all the way down the river to the Trocadero and the Eiffel Tower, where Paris 2024 will officially commence. Now, aboard each of those boats, which will have the competing countries on, there will be cameras, so you'll be able to follow along with the teams as they make that journey down the Seine. I'm sure many of our viewers home will be tuning in to try and catch a glimpse aboard the Team GB boat, where you'll see many of our athletes, including Tom Daley and Helen Glover, our 2 chosen flag bearers for the opening ceremony. Tom Daley making history as the first ever British diver to compete in 5 separate Olympic Games. 5 separate Olympic Games. How incredible is that? And Helen Glover, of course, she is an amazing rower, multi-gold medal winning rower, and she is also one of our flag bearers this year. So absolutely incredible. It is absolutely one to not miss this evening, the Paris 2024 opening ceremony.
Well, let's hope they can secure the security around that moving opening ceremony. Sophie will be with you, of course, throughout the programme, but all that to come after your headlines with Tatiana.
Tom, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories: Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today if they can, after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. The Prime Minister's urging travellers to take note of the warnings, with 1 in 4 services expected to be axed today. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. The family at the centre of a video that appears to show a Greater Manchester police officer kicking a suspect in the head are appealing for calm.
Justice for the peace, no racist police.
Hundreds of people were seen protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after 3 officers were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault in the Manchester Airport car park, which happened before the event seen in the video. That included a female officer who suffered a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. Retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville told GB News that those speculating are not helping the situation.
just whips up a storm. It isn't good enough to say things like that. If we're going to come out with comments like that, let's have some facts and evidence. And this is where we could have facts and evidence, because as an airport, it's covered by CCTV. It could take months, to review all that footage. But the facts are they could do the main bits of it within a number of days. My expertise was dealing with CCTV. So if you get the key pieces of footage, really you could have the most of it dealt with within a few days. And this is what it needs to be doing to stop all this speculation and trouble.
Mel Stride has become the fourth Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. He says the Tories should avoid veering too far to the right and focus on unity.
Also got to go deeper into the centre ground. We've got to become that party that has a broad appeal for competency in government, that channels aspiration, opportunity, all of the things that conservatism has traditionally been about, and for which there will always be a strong appetite amongst people if we can get the right platform together. And I believe that I am the leader that can bring us together as a party to fashion a unified programme that can appeal broadly. That will take time and a huge amount of work, but I believe I've shown in my track record that that's just the sort of thing that I can do.
The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose, that's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings, which are affecting its ability to monitor health and social care institutions. The CQC inspects around 90,000 services, including hospitals, GP practices and care homes. The regulator says it accepts the findings, but Wes Streeting told GB News he's stunned.
There are, cases of hospitals not being inspected for over a decade, a care provider that hadn't been inspected since 2015, and even the ratings that are published and that we use as the public to make choices about where to receive health or care, some of those are frankly bogus because of the way in which they've been put together based on either partial inspections or piecing together more recent inspections with historic verdicts on those health and care providers.
In Australia, doctors are working to reattach a surfer's leg after he was attacked by a shark. Kai Mackenzie, who's 23, was surfing near Port Macquarie, about 250 miles from Sydney, when he was bitten by a 3-metre-long great white shark. He managed to catch a wave to shore, where an off-duty police officer helped stem his bleeding. In an extraordinary twist, his severed leg later washed ashore and was put on ice by quick-thinking locals. Doctors are now working to see whether it can be reattached. And finally, to the US, where Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. In a roughly 1-minute-long video, Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to support the vice president. He and his wife, Michelle Obama, say they'll do everything to get Ms. Harris into the Oval Office. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 1. Now, the Olympics are under attack as the French high-speed rail network is left paralysed. This following a series of arson attacks in an apparent bid to cause chaos ahead of this evening's opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics. In what's being described as a coordinated act of sabotage, signals along tracks have been set on fire, cables cut and set alight, triggering mass cancellations as Paris prepares to host 7,500 athletes and 300,000 spectators. Well, in response to the events this morning, the Prime Minister has said early this morning, acts of sabotage were carried out in a prepared and coordinated manner on SNCF installations. Our intelligence services and law enforcement are mobilised to find and punish the perpetrators of these criminal acts. That from Gabriel Attal, the French Prime Minister. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by our home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, we haven't seen anything like this ahead of an Olympics before.
Not that I can think of in terms of a deliberate attempt to derail the Olympics on the day of the opening ceremony here. And you heard from the French Prime Minister there, the acting Prime Minister, that this was a deliberate and coordinated attempt with the aim, clearly, of causing maximum disruption. Because what you've got at the moment are hundreds of thousands of people moving towards the French capital, yes, for the opening ceremony tonight, but also for the events that will then subsequently get underway right across Paris. It's a huge operation for French authorities to try to ensure that the Olympics themselves go off without a hitch. But if you've got this disruption that targets those trying to get to it, then clearly it's going to impact what is happening in terms of those that want to get to the ceremony tonight. For instance, 300,000 they're expecting that will be ticketed and viewing that spectacular opening ceremony down the River Seine. 10,500 athletes, there's VIPs there that need to be secured as well. And that's why we've got, Tom, 45,000 police and gendarmes that have been mobilised into Paris, 22,000 private security personnel and 10,000 soldiers.
It was a huge security operation. Of course, obviously, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, will be there, other world leaders as well. But this has come under attack from the east, from the north and from the west. Successful acts of sabotage on this sort of compass-like high-speed rail network that France enjoys. The Strand to the south, an attempted attack, although an unsuccessful one. We're looking at a map on the screens now of these 4 attempted points of choke points, really. And yet no one has claimed responsibility.
Yeah, well, and the reason that the acting Prime Minister is saying that, you know, these were coordinated attacks where the people knew exactly what they were doing is because what they went for was that sort of electronic infrastructure, the cables along the tracks, the signal boxes that they know they can attack, and it doesn't need to be a major operation that is planned and involves a significant number of people. But you just go for that kind of infrastructure, then you can't run the trains along these tracks. And especially when it comes to the high-speed rail network, they're trying to divert some of the services onto the main lines, but they're slower. So that then has a knock-on effect on the number of high-speed trains that you can run. And that's why, for instance, Eurostar are seeing 1 in 4 of their trains cancelled and big queues at the Eurostar terminals. It is really concerning. And the hope will be, of course, that this is a one-off, but nobody is going to be complacent and accept that it's just going to be a one-off. That's why they're mobilising the law enforcement, the security services to try to go after these perpetrators.
Well, we're looking now at the northern leg of the TGV network, the one that links to London, actually, the Eurostar links to Paris. Clearly, they've been trying to fix this for some time now, some hours now, and let's hope they can get it up and running. But obviously, it's very, very hard to defend something like a railway track for very obvious reasons. It stretches for many hundreds of miles, and you can't defend every inch.
Yeah, and some of it is just very flimsy or low-level fencing that can be easily sort of bypassed to get to the trackside to be able to cause that kind of disruption by something as simple as just severing the cables. And yes, it'll take some time to get those cables reattached, replaced. The signal boxes could be even more of an issue as they were set on fire. So all of the while, even when they get this fixed, Tom, you've got people stacking up at the main terminals, such as the Eurostar terminal at St Pancras and many other stations, people stacking up that want to get to Paris. They will then be dealt with as they can, but all of the while the normal schedules that people are booked in, more and more people are coming. and it just grows, and it grows in intensity in terms of the problem of dealing with these backlogs.
Well, Mark, you mentioned St Pancras, and thank you. We're going to head straight there now to speak, of course, to Adam Cherry, our reporter. Adam, 1 in 4 Eurostar trains set to be cancelled today and the weekend.
Yeah, that's right, and you can see the effect that's having. I've just been inside the terminal and the station. It's very, very busy. I think people are starting to realise that with nearly 800,000 people delayed by this attack, it's going to have a serious effect in the next few hours. Eurostar are saying make alternative arrangements, cancel your tickets, rearrange. But there are still people arriving, and a lot of them are hopeful that they'll be able to navigate this in some way, perhaps by taking a slower train. In fact, we spoke to some on camera earlier, and this is what they had to say when they had a chat with me just now.
Basically, we heard there's some vandalism on the way to Paris. We got a message saying that we should change our train tickets. But we've come today because we think that we can probably go on the same train again and have about a 60-minute delay on the train.
I got a message from the Eurostar asking if we'd like to cancel. Yeah, but we're not going to.
You're hoping you're just going to pop on and carry on as usual?
I hope so. Well, I don't know. I haven't gone inside yet.
We came all the way here to support our team. We're supposed to go to the opening ceremony, so.
We are. Our daughter's participating in the Olympics, so we're trying to get to Paris, yeah.
Oh, really? What event is she participating in?
She's a rower. She's in the women's double scull.
Oh, fantastic. When's her first event?
Tomorrow.
Well, let's hope you get there in time.
Yeah.
All right, best of luck. So as they head inside, they realise actually this is a real problem. Team GB themselves, luckily, have not been affected by this, we're told. Well, 2 members of the team have suffered slight delays, but nothing like what we're experiencing here today. So they will be fine. The question is whether the passengers who are still arriving as I speak are going to have to make alternative arrangements very quickly, because the opening ceremony is at 6:30 p.m. and time is running out, Tom.
Time is running out. The clock is ticking. Well, Adam Cherry, thank you very much for joining us there outside St Pancras. We're going to cross the channel now, because amongst the concerning scenes as a result of this sabotage, excitement is still growing in Paris. Sophie Reaper joins us now outside the Arc de Triomphe. Sophie.
Well, good afternoon to you, Tom. Well, you might notice a subtle difference behind me, and that is that there is no one and no vehicles behind me now that you can see. All you can see instead are the police. So we're currently wondering what's gone on, if there's a reason they've closed it down. We've just seen loads of armoured police vans driving down one of the roads here in Paris. So we're not 100% sure what's going on. But I imagine it's something to do with the opening ceremony tonight. So to talk a little bit about that now, I'm joined once again by our fabulous guest and former Team GB Olympian, Mark Foster. Thank you for joining us again.
Pleasure.
We didn't get enough of you in the last hour, so we had to bring you back.
Exactly, that was
it.
Your producer told you that, right?
Yes, no,
Thank you.
Of course not, absolutely not. And you know what, we're not going to get interrupted in this hour now because we've got silence.
Peace and quiet.
Much better.
Yeah, it is kind of weird though. It's like I said, like Paris across the board, I think has been kind of really quiet from what I've seen. And whether it's just the build up to the opening ceremony or not, I don't know. But then,
there we go. We're seeing more police bikes now. We are seeing cars.
And then it's just gone.
It's just stopped. I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of officials or someone brought through here, someone very high profile, but we just don't know. Let's talk about the opening ceremony.
Yep.
Very exciting. Tom Daley and Helen Glover are our flag bearers. Do you think they're worthy choices? I imagine you're going to say yes.
No. Yeah,
No.
of course they are. It's Tom's 5th Olympic Games. And weirdly enough, because I saw an interview that he did, and obviously I know Tom quite well, his first Olympics was 2008 in Beijing when I carried the flag around that night.
You were the flag bearer in 2008, I remember.
And he was right behind me walking into the stadium, and he sort of said he never thought, obviously, that moment leading to his Olympic journey, so to speak, and his Olympic medals, and then one day he was going to be the flag bearer, not walking into the Olympic Stadium, but leading Team GB out on the River Seine, so to speak. And Helen Glover, I think, is it her 4th Olympics?
Yeah.
And she's won various
This is the
medals.
second time she's coming out of retirement, isn't it? She retired after Rio and came back for Tokyo.
Frank Sinatra, I've done the same. It's the best way of doing it.
And then now
People
she's
go,
back
they
again.
miss you, and they get too much of you, and they go, oh, we want you back, and they go, here I am, and they go, oh, okay.
Dragged back into it. You can't get enough. Absolutely. Amazing. Well, they are definitely very worthy, just as you were back in 2008.
That's very kind.
Very worthy to carry the Team GB flag. Now, A couple of new sports in the Olympics this year, one of which, breakdancing.
Yeah.
What do we think? Do we think it's a good thing that we bring in new sports and that we see new athletes, or is it that we should be maintaining tradition and kind of keeping those sports that we're all familiar with? What do you think?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, bearing in mind, golf is a global sport, and it only got introduced in Rio in 2016, and that's a global sport. So I think times have changed. Kids are into different things. You know, break dancing is a popular thing, especially if I look at the likes of, I'm good friends with Ashley Banjo, diversity. That's kind of not break dancing, but it's kind of young, urban, modern street dance, so to speak. So why shouldn't break dancing be in the Olympic Games? It's phenomenal what they do. It's a way of them highlighting what break dancing is all about. I don't think it's going to be in LA in 4 years' time. I think every Olympic Games, the host nation gets an opportunity to introduce 2 Olympic sports. So it's not going to go on there. But listen, as a kid, 14, 15 years of age, a lot of my mates, early 80s, were into breakdancing. I was not. This is a lot of body to move around, all right? But they were good at windmills and the snake, the caterpillar, and all these other bits and pieces. So I'm impressed and amazed what people can do with the human body, and to see them do it to music on the greatest stage is going to be brilliant.
Obviously, you're a former swimmer, one of our best ever. So obviously that's your favourite sport. When you're not watching the swimming, when you're not watching the pool, when you're not commentating on the pool, what is it that you most look forward to? Which is your favourite event outside of the pool?
Tiddlywinks. No, I'm joking. I'm obsessed by every sport, and I get into, especially the Olympic Games.
Don't we all at the Olympics?
By everything, right?
We in my household, we will watch everything, absolutely everything. The taekwondo, the weightlifting, everything. We love it.
It's a 2-week festival of sport. The greatest athletes in the world come together and compete against each other. But one of the things I used to love watching as a kid, my hero and idol as a kid was Duncan Gucci. I watched him win the 1980 Olympic Games in Moscow, the 100 breaststroke, and that's when I thought, swimming, he swims, I swim, this thing called the Olympic Games. I got obsessed by the Olympics. But I love watching athletics.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Alan Wells back in the day, and then I became friends with people like Colin Jackson, Linford Christie, Sally Gunnell. I got obsessed by athletics. I love the fact that I go, the short sprint, the longer sprints, to throwing events, to the marathon. I mean, there's just so much going on.
So much diversity.
Yes.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
I know you'll be tuning in, as will many of our viewers at home. Incredibly special event. The greatest show in the world, isn't it?
It is.
And I think we'll all, here at GB News, we're all going to be a bit obsessed with the Olympics going forward. But there we are, Tom. Very much a lot to look forward to.
Very much, Sophie, again joined by former Olympic swimmer Mark Foster. Now, we'll be discussing Rachel Reeves' contested claim that there's a £19 billion black hole that she was not previously aware of. Is she just rolling the groundwork now, preparing us for another tax bombshell? That next.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Now, the last time we spoke, we always talk about the topic of gender and your transition. So talk to me about now, though. What you have done is you've created a comic book about your life and about your transition to tell us things that perhaps the press and media don't talk about.
Yes, so throughout the years I have always been persuaded to write a book, but I was never ready to disclose so much. And I've been working this beautiful comic book. I brought you a little copy. It's here. You can have a look into it later, where I'm detailing past experiences, growing up in Brazil and then moving to this country, and my struggles, the struggles that I had to go through to become the woman that I'm today. I'm a woman. I'm not a biological woman, but I am a woman. I just cannot have babies because I don't have the female organs, but I'm a woman inside out, therefore I use the female toilet. But what has been going on around, there are a lot of people, they regard themselves as being transgender when they're actually not. They don't have any psychological help, they don't have any medical help. They just wear female clothes and makeup and they call themselves female. And they're the ones using female spaces and take advantage of that. And that is what should stop and be controlled.
But that's the problem, isn't it? So what do you do to stop that? I mean, the suggestion was a third extra space. How would you feel about a third extra space where, this is where if somebody is trans or any of those other things can use rather than using the female toilet?
I don't think that would work, actually, because these people that those people that regard themselves as being females in their minds, they still would use the female toilets.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 1. Now, apparently, there's a massive black hole in public spending. Experts warn it could see you paying more tax. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to reveal the government are hoping to fill an around £19 billion gap in public finances. This is planned for a speech on Monday, where the Chancellor will say things were oh so much worse than she was expecting to find. But what's the truth? Well, joining us now is the co-founder of Regionally, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Because, Justin, I was given to understand that we had something called the Office for Budget Responsibility that made all of these numbers public.
Apparently so. But all you have to do is actually have a little bit of inflation, and suddenly these numbers can vary really quite considerably. And not just in terms of actually what the budget is, but how the amount of money that's been put aside for it. Now, have a couple of years of higher inflation, and all the old budget controls that you had in place suddenly look very stupid. So what you are going to be seeing now is a row of rotten dentures being put in front of us, which would be all the different budgets for all the different areas of assets and investment you're going to see from the last government. And it's going to look awful. How do you do that? Well, you add a few noughts to it. It's the same old trick, because then what you're going to be doing, we're going to have to pay for it somehow. Good heavens, we didn't want to put up taxes, but we're going to have to because it was their fault. So I'm afraid it's an old trick. And so be prepared and be wary, be very suitably cynical. That's what politicians do.
Justin, cynical may be, but is this a bit more than cynical? After all, the Labour Party spent a 6-week election campaign saying they would not raise any taxes other than those that they laid out in their manifesto. And now we hear they're preparing this big speech on Monday where they say, everything was far worse than we ever expected, and we're going to have to raise more taxes than we thought we would. I mean, it seems deeply dishonest to me.
Because what you can now do is to say, as far as I'm concerned, we weren't going to raise taxes, but those wretched people there, we actually looked inside and they weren't telling the truth, so therefore we're going to change our tune. So I'm afraid you're going to see more of this coming through. Now, also, watch out for another thing. You'll actually be able to see some adjustment in the growth figures as well. So next month, what you'll start seeing is actually some slightly better growth figures, which, lo and behold, the new government will say, because of what we've done here, we've improved a certain amount of confidence, a bit more money coming in, and suddenly things will look a bit better. So bad news to start with, and then give you some good news a little bit later. So I'm afraid at the moment, be prepared. You're going to have more VAT going up on things like, well, there's private schools, so there'll be other areas as well. I'm afraid that's going to be almost inevitable. They're quite right. Of course, they've got to grow the economy. That's every single person running a business knows full well that's what you've got to try and do. What you've got to do, though, is get confidence back into the economy, and that's the problem. Where does that come from? That comes actually from investors, both domestic and overseas investors. So really what they've got to be doing is not so much talking to us domestically, but internationally to say, invest in Britain now, because actually we're going to be actually good people to handle the economy. Well, I'm afraid Labour does not always have a very good track record on that. So we'll have to wait and see how good they are with their wise words and whether we believe them or not.
Well, it seems that we're back to the bad old days of spin, 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 more than grow, grow, grow. Keir Starmer's been saying all this week that the inheritance he has been given is the worst since 1945. Presumably, that means he thinks it's worse than 1974, 2 years after which we had to seek a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. Or worse than 2010, when we had a deficit that touched 10% of GDP and unemployment about 3 times higher than it is today. I mean, where do they get off on this stuff?
I'm afraid people have very short memories indeed when it comes to this, because you've quite rightly gone back to some elements there where, quite rightly, we were being told really some really large porkies indeed. Now, what we've got to do now is you go through these very clearly indeed and say, right, how do these figures compare with what we knew they were a few months back, and how have they been adjusted? Is there actually a shortfall here, or have you adjusted some of the expectations of growth, and therefore you think you're going to have less money coming in, therefore you're going to find a gap, therefore I've got to put up taxes. And so what they need to try and do, and this is, I suspect, what they do, give you bad news, then feed you some better news. That'll get a bit more investment coming into the country because they'll look as though they're running the place a bit better. And so they'll find themselves in a position where the cost of funding may start going down a bit. If they can do that, it's a good trick to try and play. But
A
really,
smart
you
trick,
have to look
a
at
smart
these figures
trick.
very, very clear indeed, clever indeed.
Yeah, make things seem worse than they are initially, so that then the improvement that you're seeking looks oh so much bigger if and when it happens. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, thank you so much for joining us and talking through this magic trick that the Chancellor is attempting to play. Let's see if it works. Well, coming up, the NHS is urging blood donors to come forward. Yes, an urgent and unprecedented shortage of certain blood types. Just 1.5 days' supply left for type O blood. More on that after your headlines with Tatiana.
Tom, thank you. The top stories this hour. Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today if they can, after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. The Prime Minister is urging travellers to take note of the warnings, with 1 in 4 services expected to be axed today. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. Hundreds of people were seen protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after a video emerged appearing to show an officer kicking a suspect in the head. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault, which happened before the event seen in the video, which has been shared online. The police watchdog has launched an investigation. Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose, that's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings that are hampering its ability to keep a check on health and social care institutions. And finally to the US, where Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the president. The next president of the United States. In a roughly 1-minute-long video, Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to support the vice president. He and his wife Michelle Obama say they'll do everything to get Ms. Harris into the Oval Office. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2872 and €1.1851 euros. The price of gold is £1,845.58 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,255 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, with most of the showers across the north, a largely fine day across the south. Low pressure is dominating things, sitting up between the UK and Iceland. The closer you are to the low, the more showers you're going to get through the day today. So plenty of them coming into western Scotland. Further south, many places across southern England, particularly southeast and East Anglia, will stay dry. But the showers could be on the heavy side as they zip through across parts of Scotland. Plenty of showers developing through the afternoon, especially across Northern Ireland, and some scattered across northern England. In the sunny spells across the east, temperatures getting into the 20s, maybe even the mid-20s in and around the capital. We'll see more heavy showers developing through the afternoon and into the evening across parts of Scotland, so becoming more widespread here, some developing across to the northeast. So if you're travelling this Friday evening, just bear in mind, particularly across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England, you're going to catch these heavy downpours. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you've got a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. The showers are much more scattered further south, but there will be some for Wales, the Midlands, maybe the odd one for southwest England too. But as I mentioned, from East Anglia down to the southeast, most places staying dry through the afternoon and into the evening. As we go through the evening, the showers further north will also tend to fade away. So for many places, it will be a dry night. The winds will ease a little bit across Scotland and Northern Ireland too. We'll see a few more showers developing into southwest Scotland by the end of the night. But for many, clear skies, a little cooler than quite a few recent nights as well. On to the weekend, and Saturday again a mixture of sunshine and showers. The main focus for showers likely to be northwest England initially, southern Scotland, but we'll see some heavier showers developing across Wales and perhaps into the Midlands, possibly the odd rumble of thunder along with northeast England. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and again mostly fine across East Anglia and the southeast. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
I'm John Vincent. It's slow for the M8 eastbound in Renfrewshire due to an accident at junction 28 Glasgow Airport. Slow for the M6 southbound in the West Midlands due to an earlier accident at junction 10 Wolverhampton. We're also seeing queues on the M5 northbound in Worcestershire. 2 lanes closed there for an accident between junction 7 Worcester and 6 for Pershore Lane. Slow for the M4 westbound in Berkshire. It's all due to a broken down vehicle between junction 13 Cheveley and 14 Hungerford in the roadworks area. Queues on the M25 clockwise near London. It's all due to an earlier broken down lorry at junction 14 for Heathrow. And we're seeing queuing traffic on the M3 southbound in Surrey due to an earlier accident from junction 2 the M25 up to junction 3 for Lightwater. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past 1. Now, throughout this programme, don't forget you can send in your views, posting your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch about that last conversation, the so-called Labour tax bombshell. Well, Sasha says, Labour do not need to raise any taxes. They can make cuts, like the bloated civil service. And that is a fair point. The civil service has swelled in size, over 100,000 more civil servants than just 5 or 6 years ago. But will they want to? That's a big question. Well, Nikki says, Tom, this was always going to happen. Haven't you seen the teeny tiny line of terms and conditions on the Labour manifesto? It says, we promise all this, but once we're in, we'll ditch it all, tax you more and blame it on the Tories. Well, I think you might just be right there, Nikki. That might be a very hard line to see on the manifesto, probably because it wasn't written there, but reading between the lines, it probably was. And Carl says, they knew. Reeves saying they didn't know is either incompetence or deceit. Well, it is interesting to note, actually, an interview with the Chancellor, the then Shadow Chancellor, with the Financial Times before the general election. In it, the Financial Times writes these words. Reeves admitted that, unlike previous incoming Chancellors, she would be unable to arrive at the Treasury and claim she'd looked inside the books and realised things were worse than they looked from the outside, giving a flimsy excuse for immediate tax rises or spending cuts. The FT was saying she wouldn't be able to do that, quoting her, saying, "We've got the OBR now," she noted. Well, clearly they knew the books before arriving. and they're preparing tax rises that we weren't told about. Well, keep those views coming in, gbnews.com/your say. Moving on now, the NHS is urging blood donors to come forward amid an urgent shortage of certain types of blood. The Health Service has issued an amber alert after national stocks of O-negative and O-positive blood types, the universal donors, have fallen to unprecedented low levels. It's understood that the recent cyber attacks affecting London hospitals and more people missing appointments have contributed to this shortage. But let's get the details now with our national reporter Charlie Peters in Westfield Blood Donor Centre in West London. Charlie.
Hi Tom, yes, here in Shepherd's Bush they've had a bumper day of donors. They've just finished the lunch break and more people are coming back in as the NHS has put on an extra 1,000 additional donor slots for the coming week amid this unprecedented and very concerning low level of O-type blood group stocks available for hospitals across the country. Now, there are still tens of thousands to fill because of that amber alert warning that you just mentioned. What does that mean? Well, hospitals have been asked to restrict their use of O-negative type blood transfusions and blood donorship to patients in only essential or emergency use because of that shortage. The stocks now are just 1.6 days worth left. Usually the target is around 6 days, and it's especially vital, as you mentioned, because the O-negative is the universal donor blood group. Everyone can have it. It's the stuff that they use in the air ambulance and emergency response vehicles. But just 8% of the population is O-negative. They also want O-negative and O-positive people to come forward. But 16% of the use of blood by the NHS for transfusions, etc., does come from that O-negative blood group. So it's really important they get brought in. And as you mentioned, Tom, as well, the cause of this shortage, not only just those missed appointments, which I certainly haven't seen much of today, it's been non-stop, but rather a cyber attack last month hitting Synovis, a third-party provider to the NHS that deals in pathology. It checks blood groups, it scans them to ensure they're the right group and to make certain checks ahead of them being used in the system. But because of that cyber attack by a Russian-aligned group called Killin, a ransomware attack, they demanded £50 million in exchange for the information and access to be returned. Because of that attack, certain London hospitals haven't been able to conduct the level of checks they need to before using blood groups. So at about 10% operational capacity at the moment, really slowing down the situation. A lot of work in hospitals and blood, in London in particular, going back to basics, pen and paper, rather than the digital and swift system that we're used to. Well, earlier today here in Westfield, I spoke to not only a donor but also a nurse about how important it is to give blood.
Please don't be scared. Give it a try. I would say anything in life, just give it a try first. And if you don't like it at the end of the day, we understand. At least you know in your heart you give it a try. So I would say, don't be scared. Come in.
I think it's probably the only physical thing you can do that helps other people, really. And you know, that's my drive, really. That I can maybe someone suffering somewhere needs blood, and I'm able to donate quite easily.
Well, earlier today I also spoke to another donor who said that she was terrified of needles but had given blood over 25 times, in part because her partner had needed an urgent blood transfusion in the past, and she knows how vital and important it is. And with one simple act, just 10 minutes in a chair, you can save a life.
No, it's really interesting, Charlie. We've been looking at comments from people writing in all day saying that they've been trying to give blood, but the website's a bit slow, that it's a bit clunky to use. What advice do you have for those people?
Well, stay in the queue. Earlier today I spoke to Michael Thake, the Regional Director for NHS Blood and Transplant for London and the South East region. He just needs people to keep trying on that digital queue or by the phone, because there are 10,000 slots at least to fill this weekend. And with stocks at just 1.6 days remaining, every donation is vital. Personally, Tom, if you must know, I'm O positive, so I'm currently in a queue myself to try and book. No slots available here at Westfield today, but there are several tomorrow. If any of our viewers or listeners are cutting about in West London and need something to do, well, why not give blood?
Well, Charlie, we'll have to follow your progress. Looking forward to crossing to you live as you donate. But for now, Charlie Peters, thank you very much for joining us. Well, coming up, we'll be crossing back over the Channel. Yes, we'll be outside the Arc de Triomphe, as, of course, Paris prepares for that large opening ceremony, not just contained within a stadium, but proceeding down the Seine. Well, more on that after this.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
You think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way, and maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 48 minutes past 1. Now let's cross back across the Channel because Paris is to host the Olympic opening ceremony this very evening. Let's go to the Arc de Triomphe and join GB News reporter Sophie Reaper. Sophie, clearly the big story, the big concern for many people today is that Brits might not be able to get there in time. People who wanted to get the Eurostar to Paris, they're finding that many have now been cancelled.
A big concern, as security always was going to be for these Olympic Games, especially given the opening ceremony is going to be outdoors for the very first time. And what's more concerning is it's not as though they've got any time. It's the Olympic ceremony this evening, and Team GB are going to be getting right into it tomorrow. So let's talk a little bit about exactly what we've got coming up. Tomorrow morning, we see the men's artistic gymnastics all around. That's going to be at the gymnastics arena. We're going to see the likes of Max Whitlock, GB News royalty. He's returning to the Olympics. We're also going to be seeing newcomer Jake Jarman. Now, I watched Jake Jarman at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, where he absolutely dominated. He is one of our best. In fact, at the Paris World Cup last year, he completed, let me read this so I get this correct, 3.5 full rotations during a floor event. That was the first time that has ever been done. So there are a lot of high hopes about Jake Jarman. That's just in the gymnastics. We're also going to be seeing a medal event in the pool. That's the 3 meters synchro diving. Two of our best are going to be going for the medal in the women's event there. We're also seeing a medal event in the skateboarding. Now, that's a relatively new event, but Team GB have got big hopes there. That's because in Tokyo 2020, Sky Brown, the youngster, I think she was 14 at the time, she took gold in that event. I think that was the first time skateboarding was ever at the Olympics. This being the second. Sky Brown is going to go again on Sunday, but tomorrow we're going to be seeing Andy McDonald. He is not only the oldest in that pool, but he's a bit of a legend in the sport. He's got 23 X Games medals, the most of anyone ever. He's also the first man to ever skateboard through the White House. So a very interesting chap. It's his 51st birthday on Wednesday of next week. So let's keep our fingers crossed that not only can Sky Brown do very well, but that Andy can do well in the men's. There is so much to look forward to, not just this weekend, but over the coming days. We have got so many incredible athletes. You'll have heard, remember me speaking to Mark Foster earlier about our potential in this Olympics. In Tokyo, we took home 64 medals. There were 22 gold, 20 silver, 20 bronze. Now, the games before that in Rio 2016, that was our best ever performance with 67 medals on the table. There is big hope that we can perhaps beat even that in this Games. Paris, of course, being the closest thing to a home Games that we can get us outside of London. So that may play a big part in this. There's plenty that we're going to do very well in. I am very convinced that we're going to do very well in the triathlon. Athletes like Alex Yee, Georgia Taylor-Brown, Beth Potter, they have all been performing incredibly well. Of course, looking at the athletics track, an event synonymous with the Olympics. Usually the athletics track is where the opening ceremony is held. We've got the likes of Keely Hodgkinson. At the Diamond League event last week, she smashed the British record to take gold there. People have got very high hopes for her. But also athletes like Matthew Hudson-Smith, Josh Kerr in the distance. These are events that we could do very, very well in. So I've got high hopes for Team GB, and I think a lot of our viewers will as well. Of course, there are the issues of travelling over to Paris that they will have to contend with. But of course, this will all be covered. We're going to be in Paris for the next few days, bringing you all the latest. We'll be live tomorrow morning outside the Aquatic Centre ahead of that gold medal match on the diving. So make sure you tune in for that to hear all the latest about Team GB and the Paris Olympics 2024.
Yes, Sophie, I have to say, I have to confess, I am a medal table fanatic, a medal table obsessive. Ever since 2012, I've been following these medal tables, watching Team GB rise up and above and beyond and punch well above our weight. In 2012, we came third in the full medal table, behind only China and the United States. And then, as you say, in 2016, with those 67 medals, we were second in the world. Team GB second in the world, although sadly in the COVID year 2020 we slipped to fourth. What's your prediction for how we might do in Paris? Could we rise really up to be one of those top 3 sporting nations again?
That is a very big question, Tom. I think you're always going to see the likes of the USA and the likes of China doing incredibly well at the Olympics. And when you compare our population sizes, is it any wonder? As you say, we're punching well above our weight with how well we do. There are also events that Team GB don't necessarily focus on. A big one for us is usually the beach volleyball. I joked with Mark Foster earlier about it, saying not many people are going to be on the beach at Skegness playing volleyball. So that's one that we don't necessarily get ourselves involved in. But there are other events that, you know, coming out of the woodwork that we've not traditionally been necessarily that good at. Weightlifting, for example. Emily Campbell in Tokyo, I think it was the silver medal she took. She is our best ever weightlifter, and she's going to be here again in Paris. These are events that people never really tend to talk about, but it's those events that are going to drive us up the medal table. So we've got our fingers crossed here in Paris for an excellent performance, a golden
Marvellous
performance.
Stuff. Well, Sophie will of course be back with you throughout the programme there outside the Arc de Triomphe. But of course, plenty more to come as well. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says he's stunned with the problems within the NHS. But what's the true scale? We'll have more on that after these messages.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, with most of the showers across the north, a largely fine day across the south. Low pressure is dominating things, sitting up between the UK and Iceland. The closer you are to the low, the more showers you're going to get through the day today. So plenty of them coming into western Scotland. Further south, many places across southern England, particularly southeast and East Anglia, will stay dry. But the showers could be on the heavy side as they zip through across parts of Scotland. Plenty of showers developing through the afternoon, especially across Northern Ireland, and some scattered across northern England. In the sunny spells across the east, temperatures getting into the 20s, maybe even the mid-20s in and around the capital. We'll see more heavy showers developing through the afternoon and into the evening across parts of Scotland, so becoming more widespread here, some developing across to the northeast. So if you're travelling this Friday evening, just bear in mind, particularly across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England, you're going to catch these heavy downpours. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you've got a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. The showers are much more scattered further south, but there will be some for Wales, the Midlands, maybe the odd one for southwest England too. But as I mentioned, from East Anglia down to the southeast, most places staying dry through the afternoon and into the evening. As we go through the evening, the showers further north will also tend to fade away. So for many places, it will be a dry night. The winds will ease a little bit across Scotland and Northern Ireland too. We'll see a few more showers developing into southwest Scotland by the end of the night. But for many, clear skies, a little cooler than quite a few recent nights as well. On to the weekend, and Saturday again a mixture of sunshine and showers. The main focus for showers likely to be northwest England initially, southern Scotland, but we'll see some heavier showers developing across Wales and perhaps into the Midlands, possibly the odd rumble of thunder along with northeast England. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and again mostly fine across East Anglia and the southeast. Bye for now.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions
that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
and a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Friday, the 26th of July. I'm Tom Harwood. Olympics under attack. A coordinated series of apparent arson attacks have paralysed high-speed rail lines just hours before the citywide opening ceremony. Almost 1 million passengers are affected with disruptions set to last for days. We're live on the ground. And the effects are not just in France, but in the UK as well, as 1 in 4 Eurostar trains are to be cancelled today and over the weekend. We hear from those affected. Meanwhile, chaos in Manchester. For a second night as police stations are pelted with eggs and tram lines blocked following the suspension of a police officer over a video appearing to show police brutality. But is there more to it? Plus, not fit for purpose. Health Secretary Wes Streeting slams the Care Quality Commission, saying he was stunned by the scale of problems faced within the NHS and care system. I'm speaking to health experts to gauge the true scale of this problem. Now, of course, throughout the programme, we want to hear from you. Post your comments and thoughts or opinions by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Have you been impacted by the travel chaos this weekend? Were you thinking of making it down to Paris for the opening ceremony? Have you been stopped along the way? And who do you think is behind this bizarre coordination of attempting to disrupt all of this travel ahead of the Olympics Games? It seems very odd, it seems very planned, and as the Prime Minister of France said, it seems coordinated. Well, we'll get to that mystery and what's behind it after your headlines with Tatiana.
Tom, thank you. The top stories as our Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today if they can after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. The Prime Minister is urging people to take note of the warnings, with 1 in 4 services expected to be axed today. This after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. The company's warning the situation could last all weekend while repairs are conducted. The family at the centre of a video that appears to show a Greater Manchester police officer kicking a suspect in the head are appealing for calm.
Justice for the police! No racist police!
Hundreds of people were seen protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after 3 officers were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault in the Manchester Airport car park, which happened before the event seen in the video. Retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville told GB News that those speculating are not helping the situation.
just whips up a storm. It isn't good enough to say things like that. If we're going to come out with comments like that, let's have some facts and evidence. And this is where we could have facts and evidence, because as an airport, it's covered by CCTV. It could take months, you know, to review all that footage. But the facts are they could do the main bits of it within a number of days. My expertise was dealing with CCTV. So if you get the key pieces of footage, really you could have the most of it dealt with within a few days. And this is what it needs to be doing to stop all this speculation and trouble.
Mel Stride has become the fourth Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. He says the Tories should avoid veering too far to the right and focus on unity.
Also got to go deeper into the centre ground. We've got to become that party that has a broad appeal for competency in government, that channels aspiration, opportunity, all of the things that conservatism has traditionally been about, and for which there will always be a strong appetite amongst people if we can get the right platform together. And I believe that I am the leader that can bring us together as a party to fashion a unified programme that can appeal broadly. That will take time and a huge amount of work, but I believe I've shown in my track record that that's just the sort of thing that I can do.
The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose. That's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings, which are affecting its ability to monitor health and social care institutions. The CQC inspects around 90,000 services, including hospitals, GP practices, care homes and dental surgeries. The regulator says it accepts the findings, but Wes Streeting told GB News he's stunned.
There are, cases of hospitals not being inspected for over a decade, a care provider that hadn't been inspected since 2015, and even the ratings that are published and that we use as the public to make choices about where to receive health or care, some of those are frankly bogus because of the way in which they've been put together based on either partial inspections or piecing together more recent inspections with historic verdicts on those health and care providers.
In Australia, doctors are working to reattach a surfer's leg after he was attacked by a shark. Kai Mackenzie, who's 23, was surfing near Port Macquarie on Tuesday morning, about 250 miles from Sydney, when he was bitten by a 3-metre-long great white shark. He managed to catch a wave to shore, where an off-duty police officer helped stem his bleeding. In an extraordinary twist, his severed leg later washed ashore and was put on ice by quick-thinking locals. Doctors are now working to see whether it can be reattached. And finally, in the United States, where Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. In a video of their phone conversation, Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to support her campaign. He and his wife, Michelle Obama, say they'll do everything to get Miss Harris into the Oval Office. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 7 minutes past 2. The Olympics are under attack. This as the French high-speed rail network is left paralysed following a series of arson attacks in an apparent bid to cause chaos ahead of this evening's opening ceremony. Well, in what's described as coordinated sabotage, signals along tracks have been set on fire, cables have been cut and set alight, triggering mass cancellations as Paris prepares to host over 7,500 athletes and 300,000 spectators. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by our Home and Security editor, Mark White, because, Mark, this is a very serious situation ahead of the Olympics.
Yes, indeed. France's transport minister has just been speaking to national broadcaster TF1 and has confirmed that investigators probing what has happened on these rail lines have found a number of incendiary devices. They are being examined. The transport minister has given no indication yet of who they suspect of carrying out these coordinated attacks. Another French broadcaster, BFM TV, is reporting through police sources that an incendiary device was found by a train track in Marseille back in May when the Olympic torch was travelling through that city. That is only just being revealed and reported. So these coordinated attacks may be linked to the incident in Marseille, and it may stem back just quite a bit further than just these attacks, clearly designed to coincide with that opening ceremony this evening.
Clearly this has been long planned. Clearly this has been coordinated. And clearly relatively sophisticated. We don't know what precisely an incendiary device might look like, what precisely, how sophisticated that is. But it seems that this is a group that has, it seems to be more than one person because of the vast geographic difference in location. That would lead us to suppose that it's quite a sophisticated operation. Who could be behind it?
Well, there's definitely a level of sophistication about it because what they've targeted is the electronic infrastructure along the track side, the cables to the signalling boxes, the signal boxes themselves, that mean that although the track is undamaged, you can't run trains along that track because you've no way of running the signals properly to ensure the safe passage of these trains. In particular, the high-speed train services are being rerouted on slower track beds, and that means that there's a knock-on effect on the number of services that they can run. And in terms of who might be responsible, well, sources are suggesting that right at the top of the list has to be Russia. The French president himself spoke a few months back and said that he was in no doubt that Russia would attempt to try to disrupt the Olympics. And in just recent weeks, the French government accused Russia of embarking on a disinformation campaign online and through social media, hyping up the potential for real security challenges around the Olympics. And there's no doubt there are real security challenges around the Olympics. They're doing it different in Paris to what is normally you would expect from Olympic events around the world. If we think to Rio or think back to London 2012, they are mainly contained within an Olympic park. You know, that infrastructure is built around a park that's much more easy to contain and to secure with a sterile cordon around it. The French are doing it differently. In Paris, they've spread it out right across the capital, multiple venues where events will take place. And that means you've got so many more different areas that you have to try to secure. And that's why we're seeing 45,000 police and gendarmes that have been brought in, 10,000 soldiers, 22,000 private security personnel. It is a very difficult task ahead, and it's got off to a very worrying start for authorities.
Would you suggest that this is a start and not an end? Might we see more disruption, more incendiary devices, more targeted chaos?
Well, the worry has to be that it is just the start of something that might be more concerted in terms of the efforts to disrupt the Games. And that's why we've had several government ministers, the acting Prime Minister, now the Transport Minister, and indeed the Sporting Minister, all saying that police and security services are now focused on trying to track down the perpetrators to ensure there's no further disruption. The Sports Minister has just said on French TV as well that they are evaluating and assessing what the damage and disruption has been to in particular the opening ceremony, because lots of people will have been using the rail network to try to get into Paris for this evening's opening ceremony. So just how badly that's been disrupted, we don't know. There's no talk yet of that event being either it certainly won't be cancelled, but perhaps delayed or postponed. There's no talk of that yet, but they are evaluating the situation to see whether there is significant disruption to that.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much for that latest update there. Really concerning stuff, and it really does highlight the sort of single point of failure, the vulnerabilities in our transport systems, in our communication infrastructure. It does make us, I suppose, worry about what could happen next. But let's cross to St Pancras International now in London. Join our GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, you've been looking at the situation there at Eurostar. What's it looking like?
Well, Tom, it's very, very busy. Lots of people inside the station and the Eurostar terminal just waiting around with their luggage. Several trains cancelled. There are some slower conventional trains running, but of course there's now a bottleneck. I've just been inside and there's a long queue for the help desk. People being told to cancel their journeys, rearrange in some other way. But the clock is ticking now, and the opening ceremony itself begins at 6:30. So it's looking like, unfortunately, lots of people will simply miss that out. I spoke to some affected travellers earlier today, and at that point there was still some hope that they might be able to rearrange something, and you can get an idea of the kind of chaos that's unfolding here by taking a look at what they had to say.
Basically, we heard there's some vandalism on the way to Paris. We got a message saying that we should change our train tickets. But we've come today because we think that we can probably go on the same train again and have about a 60-minute delay on the train.
I got a message from the Eurostar asking if we'd like to cancel. Yeah, but we're not going to.
You're hoping you're just going to pop on and carry on as usual?
I hope so. Well, I don't know. I haven't gone inside yet.
We came all the way here to support our team. We're supposed to go to the opening ceremony, so.
We are. Our daughter's participating in the Olympics, so we're trying to get to Paris, yeah.
Oh, really? What event is she participating in?
She's a rower. She's in the women's double scull.
Oh, fantastic. When's her first event?
Tomorrow.
Well, let's hope you get there in time.
Yeah.
All right,
we'll get there.
Well, there you go. 1 in 4 journeys affected, not just today, but throughout the weekend. Upwards of 800,000 passengers affected already by this. Perhaps more, actually. I'm still seeing some people arrive with their luggage to hear the bad news, I think. So the clock is ticking, as I say, not long to go before the opening ceremony. Hopefully some of these people make other arrangements, but I'm not sure they'll have the time now, Tom.
Goodness me, it is this sort of tantalising glimmer of hope, I suppose, Adam. When you hear that 1 in 4 trains have been cancelled, you think, well, surely I'll be able to get a space, and then everyone turns up, and that's thousands of people who will be ultimately disappointed.
Yeah, that's the problem, I'm afraid. You can see on the departure board, the 3:30 train is cancelled entirely. They've moved some people into the departure lounge itself, so some of the slower trains may be moving, but I think further on it becomes more difficult. And as I say, with this bottleneck, once something like this happens, it's very, very difficult to scramble something else and make other arrangements. So, yeah, not great, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and it just backs up and backs up and backs up. Adam Cherry, thank you so much for joining us outside St Pancras International. Well, now we're going to hop across the channel, perhaps go underneath the channel, pop up the other side. Thankfully, our connection's not been disrupted by any sabotage, because Sophie Reaper is there for us outside the Arc de Triomphe. Sophie, what's the atmosphere like actually in Paris itself?
Well, good afternoon to you once again, Tom. Thankfully, we haven't been disrupted by any kind of issues today. Thankfully. Not yet, anyway, not to jinx us. In terms of atmosphere, around the Arc de Triomphe right now, it's pretty silent. And that's perhaps because of security. They seem to have locked this area down, so not many people. However, we're now about 3 or 4 hours away from that opening ceremony, so people will have been moving from here anyway down to where all the action will be at the River Seine. Now, that it's going to start. About 10,500 athletes will be piling around on around 100 boats. They're going to start at Austerlitz Bridge and they're going to move all the way down the River Seine. The first time ever that this will be taking place outdoors. They'll move down the River Seine towards the Eiffel Tower and the Trocadero. We'll be seeing that there'll be cameras aboard reach the boats. So people at home, about 1 billion people the audience is predicted at for this opening ceremony. So a huge number of people will be tuning in tonight. And if you are tuning in, as I say, there'll be cameras aboard the boats so you can follow along with the athletes, not just from your country, but from all over the globe. 206 different countries competing in the Paris Olympics this year. And I'm sure it will be quite the spectacle. All very hush-hush at the moment, but there are rumours that Celine Dion and Lady Gaga will be performing a duet of Edith Piaf's La Vie en Rose. So that could be very, very special indeed.
Amazing. I should say, Sophie, we're looking now at athletes arriving at the Olympic Village. So a sneak preview of some of the people that we'll see aboard those boats tonight. It's a very unusual opening ceremony in that respect because, of course, we're used to seeing opening ceremonies limited to a stadium. This is going to be a pretty wide and long stretch of river.
Absolutely, and I think on one side of things it really does open doors to the French Olympic Committee with how they can express themselves in this. This is always the thing. I think everyone will remember London 2012 when they did that the big display about agriculture, something that's really truly British at heart, and that's something that's always conveyed in a country's opening ceremony. They really try to push their sense of themselves, and here tonight in Paris, the options, really, the sky is the limit for them because they're not, as you say, confined to a stadium as we've always seen in the past. Instead, they've got all that open air, they've got river to work with, they've got boats, and as we should say, there's around 300,000 people expected to line the river at the Seine this evening. Some people will have purchased seats. They range from about €90 to €2,700. I imagine they're pretty good seats at that price. But other people will just be getting wherever they can. I know myself and my cameraman are going to attempt to bring you the latest from the opening ceremony, but if we've got to contend with 300,000 people, that could be quite a feat. You mentioned, of course, as well, athletes arriving at the village. Team GB have been in a holding camp for the past few days, at training camps, so that they can really be adjusted to life in the Olympics. They've got them arriving now. They have been arriving for the past few days. There was a big controversy before Paris that the beds at the Olympic Village are actually made of cardboard. Now, that's because the French Olympic Committee want this to be the greenest games ever. So that's a big part of it. And Tom Daley, one of our flag bearers, actually put a video on social media the other day showing what it's like. And I'll say, it didn't look too bad. I'm not sure I would want to compete in the Olympics and have to contend with a cardboard bed. But
Sophie, I have to say there are all
forced to deal with, unfortunately.
Puritanical rumours as to why they might want cardboard beds to be installed there to sort of install some morality over those athletes. Although Tom Daley did show that it could take some bouncing. I have to also say that Team GB reported to have flown out their own chef. What's this all about?
Well, we saw reports this morning about that. There are rumours from the camp that apparently some of the athletes were served raw meat. So if that is the case, I can't say I particularly blame them for flying out their own chef. Of course, we were speaking to Mark Foster earlier and we talked about the diet of an athlete during the Olympics. These people are contending with the finest margins possible. You look at the 100-metre sprint. You have not got long. You've got 9 seconds, essentially, if you're looking for a medal. So these are the tiniest margins. So things like your bed, things like the food that you eat, things like how far you've had to travel to get to where the Olympics are being held. These are all things that will come into play. And those people, the chef de mission, Mark England, who's been with the Team GB, I think this is his 3rd Olympics with us, he is in charge of the athletes and making sure that everyone performs the best they can. I'm sure if I were him and I'd heard reports of my athletes being served raw meat, unintentionally raw meat, one would imagine, not just a particularly bloody French steak, then I would be considering flying out my own chef as well. So these are the margins we're dealing with, and let's hope that them flying in their own chef will do nothing but good things for Team GB.
I have to say, if I was asked, you know, which country was it that flew a chef into the other country, I would have immediately said, well, obviously that was the French team flying a chef into London. But I don't think anyone was thinking it would have been quite the other way around. No, very, very strange. Sophie Reaper, thank you very much for joining us there, live from outside the Arc de Triomphe in the middle of the Olympic city, Paris. Quite fitting that the Olympics is in Paris this year. After all, it was France that kicked the modern Olympics off over a century ago. Although when the Olympics first was kicked off over that century ago, it included things like competitive painting and competitive ploughing, two Olympic sports that aren't in this year's Olympics. They were phased out after not long. I don't know, perhaps Olympic painting should be brought back, but clearly it's not been viewed as athletic enough. But of course, much more to come on the programme. Coming up, we'll be discussing Health Secretary Wes Streeting's comments that England's health and social care watchdog is not fit for purpose.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Stefan Kyriazis has, as always, been in theatres. He's here to tell us of his experiences. Hello, Stefan, or should I say, hello, Dolly.
Well, hello, Michael.
Well, hello.
You're looking swell, Michael. I can tell, Michael. You're still glowing, you're crowing, and you're going strong. So I have been to see Hello, Dolly at the Palladium. It's on there until September.
Seems like you've enjoyed it.
It is absolutely pure joy. I think we've even got a little bit of footage just to get people in the mood of the curtain call. But it is just sublime joy, headlined by Imelda Staunton. Let's see if we've got a little clip for everybody to look at.
It was a great show, was it?
It's
a feel-good show?
Absolute bliss. So 1964 musical, music and lyrics by Jerry Herman. 1969 famous Barbra Streisand film. But it's been played by Carol Channing, Ethel Merman, Bette Midler, all these people, Danny LaRue. So the joy of this show, it's so traditional, but you have an old woman leading the show, and then Irene Malloy, who's another slightly younger widow in New York, the hat maker. Orchestration's gorgeous, masked voices gorgeous. Big train, kind of cut-out train, fills the stage. They all climb on board. It builds towards the end. You get the big Hello, Dolly number, and the whole she did there. Wow, 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 fellas. Look at the old girl now. Staunton is 68, I think. She's 5'0". The audience kept applauding through the show. She stood there. There was a moment. We all felt such joy.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2. Now we're going to take you to Paris, where it's all happening today, to look at some live pictures. First of all, we can, of course, see the situation just north of Paris, where engineers are attempting to fix the broken signalling on the high-speed rail network, causing travel chaos for many, many people. But that's not getting down those in the Olympic Village, because, of course, we can see the Olympic athletes arriving in the bottom left there. But it's not just the Olympic athletes who are arriving, because it's not just an athletic event. World leaders are taking the red carpet in the Elysee Palace, meeting the French President Emmanuel Macron. And we can see the steps of the Elysee here as world leaders greet Emmanuel Macron, hosting a reception for many, many leaders ahead of the opening ceremony, which takes place at 6:30 this evening. Now, let's also look at the scene in Gare du Nord, the station that many people who've taken the Eurostar will be most familiar with, the arrival point, the connection link between London and Paris. It looks relatively stable there for the moment, but we do know 1 in 4 Eurostar trains have been cancelled. The Eurovision hasn't been impacted, I'm glad to tell you. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on all of these scenes throughout the programme. Now to England's health and social care watchdog. It's been declared not fit for purpose. That's according to Health Secretary Wes Streeting. He wants to reform the Care Quality Commission, who are meant to ensure the safety and standards within the sector. Well, speaking to GB News this morning, he said he didn't expect healthcare to be in such a mess.
I was stunned. I mean, I knew that the NHS was broken, and I said that on day one, but what I didn't anticipate was receiving a report that revealed that 1 in 5 health and care providers has never been inspected, that there are cases of hospitals not being inspected for over a decade, a care provider that hadn't been inspected since 2015.
Well, joining us now is health writer Roy Lilly. And Roy, how much truth is there to this? What sort of scandal are we looking at here?
Oh, it's all true, and everybody in the NHS has known this for ages. The CQC is a basket case. I mean, this is not the first inquiry. 2013, there was an inquiry that pulled it apart. The difficulty is the whole process of inspection. If you turn up and a place is good, you've wasted your time. And if you turn up and a place is bad, it's too late. That's the problem. I mean, nobody really resorts to inspection in total quality management anymore. You ensure that there's quality throughout the system. I mean, just turning up and looking for trouble doesn't resolve anything. Its cost, I think, over the years, I estimate the total cost of the CQC has been about £230 million. And that's taken from the NHS in fees, because the CQC funds itself by taking fees from the people it inspects. So there's about 230 million quid that's been sucked out of the front line of healthcare. For what purpose? I mean, we've seen catastrophic midwifery failings, and we continue to see them. We've seen appalling failings in A&E, in waits in corridors and what have you. The CQC is just useless. They just turn up and they say, oh, well, this is bad, and they walk away. What's needed is some kind of proper system where we can forecast where things are likely to go wrong. I mean, the NHS has got more data than Custer had Indians. It's awash with data. So it's possible to forecast where problems are likely to come from. Once you do that, then you can send in teams of people into a trust and say, look, we can see you've got a problem coming in this or that or whatever. The data says it for you. So we're here to kind of to help you and make sure you avoid the problems. But this retrospective inspection is a total waste of public money.
Isn't the idea behind retrospective inspection, though, that people can see where there are failings in care, where there are failings in quality, and which trusts and which specific settings are doing well? I mean, that's an important function, is it not?
It is, and they do that. But the key to this is getting all the trusts as good as the best. Now, you do that by traipsing out like 50 people, trampling through a hospital, hacking everybody off. I mean, some of the inspectors have got a terrible name for their attitude and how they go about it. I think they're the Gestapo. and it damages morale. And then you get a one word saying, needs improvement. Well, if you were a doctor or nurse and you had 2 hospitals to go and work at, would you go and work in the one that says needs improvement, or would you go in the one that says, good or whatever? I mean, I know what I do, and I could guess, I think, what you do. You go to where the best. So you've got to make the best, you've got to make the rest as good as the best. And we don't do that. All we do is stomp around, point a finger, and everybody goes running. I mean, there are ex-CQC inspectors that they bring in a few people, they charge £100,000 a time to groom a hospital to pass the CQC inspector. I mean, it's a flourishing little business.
Goodness me, to suck up to the health Gestapo. Well, Roy, we're running out of time, but just in a word, do you think the Health Secretary is going to abolish the Care Quality Commission?
I don't think you can do that, but I do think we should use data to predict where the problems are likely to happen. And it's possible and it can be done. OK, well, Roy Lilly, we'll watch this space. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, stay with us because we'll be discussing Prince Harry's mission against the tabloids that he claims created a rift within the royal family. That after your latest news headlines.
Tom, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today if they can, after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. The Prime Minister is urging travellers to take note of the warnings, with 1 in 4 services expected to be axed today. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. Hundreds of people were seen protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after a video emerged appearing to show an officer kicking a suspect in the head. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault, which happened before the event seen in the video, which has been shared online. The police watchdog has launched an investigation. Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose. That's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings that are hampering its ability to keep a check on health and social care institutions. And finally to the US, where Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. In a video of their phone conversation, Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to support her campaign. He and his wife Michelle Obama say they'll do everything to get Ms. Harris into the Oval Office. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, with most of the showers across the north, a largely fine day across the south. Low pressure is dominating things, sitting up between the UK and Iceland. The closer you are to the low, the more showers you're going to get through the day today. So plenty of them coming into western Scotland. Further south, many places across southern England, particularly southeast and East Anglia, will stay dry. But the showers could be on the heavy side as they zip through across parts of Scotland. Plenty of showers developing through the afternoon, especially across Northern Ireland, and some scattered across northern England. In the sunny spells across the east, temperatures getting into the 20s, maybe even the mid-20s in and around the capital. We'll see more heavy showers developing through the afternoon and into the evening across parts of Scotland, so becoming more widespread here, some developing across to the northeast. So if you're travelling this Friday evening, just bear in mind, particularly across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England, you're going to catch these heavy downpours. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you've got a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. The showers are much more scattered further south, but there will be some for Wales, the Midlands, maybe the odd one for southwest England too. But as I mentioned, from East Anglia down to the southeast, most places staying dry through the afternoon and into the evening. As we go through the evening, the showers further north will also tend to fade away. So for many places, it will be a dry night. The winds will ease a little bit across Scotland and Northern Ireland too. We'll see a few more showers developing into southwest Scotland by the end of the night. But for many, clear skies, a little cooler than quite a few recent nights as well. On to the weekend, and Saturday again a mixture of sunshine and showers. The main focus for showers likely to be northwest England initially, southern Scotland, but we'll see some heavier showers developing across Wales and perhaps into the Midlands, possibly the odd rumble of thunder along with northeast England. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and again mostly fine across East Anglia and the southeast. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M90 northbound in Perth and Kinross. Firstly, due to a broken down vehicle at junction 10 Craig End, and then we've got the usual queues up towards junction 12, the Broxton roundabout. Slow for the M6 southbound in the West Midlands due to an earlier accident at junction 10 for Wolverhampton. All lanes have been reopened there though. M5 northbound in Worcestershire, queues again due to an earlier accident between junction 7 Worcester and 6 Pershaw Lane. Slow for the M4 in both directions around junction 40 Port Talbot. Westbound queues not helped by an earlier accident that's now been moved to the hard shoulder. There's queues on the M25 anti-clockwise in Hertfordshire, lane closed there for an accident between junction 19 Watford and 18 for Chorley Wood, and slow due to an earlier accident on the M3 southbound in Surrey between junction 2 the M25 and 3 Lightwater.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 2. Now, up next, it's the one and only Martin Daubney. And Martin, what's coming up on your programme?
Tom done a fantastic job there today, Captain. Well, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, is set to speak at 3 o'clock, give a statement on the situation around the suspended police officer from the Manchester Airport incident. He was saying the situation isn't clear-cut. He knows there's more to this than meets the eye. He's also called for a cease and desist on the politicisation of this incident. 3 o'clock, all eyes on that. Part 4 this week of the GB News' exclusives into the illegal immigration situation in the European Union. Today we can reveal that a staggering, Tom, 2.4% of the 4.2 million illegal immigrants that have gone into the European Union over the last 4 years have been deported. 2.4% deported. That means 2 million illegals are wandering around the continent and, of course, making their way towards our shore. We'll also be talking about the Tory leadership. I'll be joined by Jonathan Gullis, the former Conservative Party Deputy Chairman, in the studio to talk about the runners and the riders in the Tory leadership contest. All that 3 till 6 p.m.
Goodness me, 2.4%. By my maths, that's a 97.6% chance of not being deported if you make your way to the European Union. What an astounding incentive.
Yeah, 130,000 deportations out of 2.4 million. And the report's author will argue to me with clarity, there's no idea who these people are, no idea if they have criminal records, no idea if they're involved in terrorism, and they could be coming to a social house near you soon.
Goodness me. Of course, Andy Burnham as well at 3 o'clock. Looking forward to it. Really, really interesting stuff there. Context. Martin, thank you very much. Now, a service remembering the sacrifice made by bombing crews during the Second World War has been held in Lincoln. 58,000 men and women died, both serving and supporting the most perilous role in the Air Force. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has this report.
At the International Bomber Command Centre in Lincoln, a day dedicated to honouring its namesake. Roy Briggs risked everything flying in Bomber Command. Now aged 99, the wireless operator had one of the most dangerous jobs in the war, bombing Berlin.
I couldn't believe it, really. I thought, is this me or am I dreaming that a 20-year-old boy from the back streets of Battersea was flying over Germany in a Lancaster? I've got 3 old age pensioners looking after me.
Marking Bomber Command Day, Roy joins some of the last remaining veterans who flew the deadliest of missions. But toward the end of the war, dropping food, not bombs, became the task.
Before we took off, we heard that Mr. Churchill was going to make a statement in the Commons at 3:30. And we dropped food and we were on our way back. And I tuned into the BBC and I heard him say, tomorrow will be VE Day.
This is the 4th Bomber Command Day, created to preserve the memory of the people who served in the most perilous place, the sky. Some 58,000 people died serving with Bomber Command. Here at the centre, their names are included on memorial walls, the setting for a service remembering their role securing peace. Nikki Vanderdrift is Chief Executive.
We need to remember that all efforts should be made to protect peace and freedom, and every day those in the military are fighting that fight for us.
With members from 62 countries, the Allies fighting in Bomber Command took the war to the heart of Germany. Colonel Jonathan Bouchard is from the Canadian Air Force. This year, it commemorates 100 years of service.
The contribution that our people did standing next to allies and partners back then is to be remembered.
Nations once more coming together, not to defend, but to remember. Will Hollis, GB News in Lincoln.
Well, thanks very much to Will Hollis for that report. Now, coming up, we're talking Prince Harry after that interview last night in which he opened up about his legal battles with the press. He says it created a rift within the royal family. But was that all there is to it? More on that after this.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
You're making me think. You were here last week talking about The Merry Widow at Glyndebourne, which I went to see last night. And it was much the same thing. I mean, musically, it doesn't rate, to me, much higher than a musical. But the professionalism of the delivery, the joy of the cast, therefore the joy of the audience, the absolute charisma of Daniel Deniz singing and dancing in the main role, absolutely superb. So just to recollect that. And by the way, how long does Hello, Dolly?
That's on until September the 14th. And I would say there's been some bumpy, like My Fair Lady, sort of traditional musicals have sort of wobbled quite a bit recently, even The King and I a bit. This one nails everything. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I came out humming and beaming for the rest of the night. And the second one is The Baker's Wife, complete opposite. Small show at the Meunier Chocolate Factory. And again, we've got bootleg illegal footage of me, I think, just to give, because you need to see the setting of this place. It's completely incredible what they've done in a small space. Hopefully we've got a little bit of my illegal video again. It's set up like a 1930s Provence village square. You can see the cafe there at one end. At the other end is the bread shop, the bakery. The walls are all painted like brick. There's shutters everywhere, posters. People pop out of shutters that you don't even know how they are. We're sat either side. And it's a Stephen Schwartz musical. So he's the guy behind Wicked, Pippin, things like that. But it's still kind of joyous and fun until the marquis of the village, who has 3 nieces, comes along with his manservant who sweeps her away. And then for me, I didn't like how the story turns. I don't think it works anymore in a modern day.
The People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 47 minutes past 2. We're going to take you to the Elysee Palace now, where Emmanuel Macron has rolled out the red carpet for world leaders. Of course, the Olympics is not just a sporting event. It very much is a diplomatic event. And clearly, Macron, a man who has been a little embattled in the polls in his own country, losing many, many seats in his parliament, his party, of course, in the recent elections, he'll be looking towards this event to stand tall on the world stage. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer, our own Prime Minister, will be arriving in Paris today for that opening ceremony. Tonight, festivities kick off at 6:30. But clearly, the French president here welcoming world leaders, rolling out the red carpet for them in the forecourt of the Elysee Palace for a reception before that opening ceremony takes place. A big moment for French diplomacy there. But back closer to home, Prince Harry is claiming his mission to take on British tabloids played a central role in his rift with the royals. During ITV's Tabloids on Trial documentary, he says he wished his family joined together in the wake of the phone hacking scandal. He also claimed he wouldn't be bringing his wife Meghan back to the UK because of safety issues. Well, joining us now is royal biographer Nigel Cawthorne. And Nigel, let's start with that issue. Will Meghan ever return to the United Kingdom?
Well, I find it rather surprising that he's worried about her safety over here when Donald Trump has just been shot in the ear. He mentioned a knife attack or acid attack on her. You have to get rather close and personal for that. We don't have many AR-15s circulating here. Those have a range of 600 yards. So is he expecting some sort of attack on her by Prince William, or who's going to be that close to her?
Goodness me, it does seem a stretch to suggest that the United Kingdom is more dangerous than the United States, or even than some of the African countries that they've been visiting on their sort of mini tour recently. But Nigel, I suppose this gets to the heart of another legal issue that Prince Harry has had, which was, of course, asking for police protection from the Home Office, which potentially is leading into this argument.
Well, indeed, but he has voluntarily decided to quit this country and go it on his own. So it's up to him to look after himself now, surely.
You might think that given his, I can't remember how many tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars he's signed with various deals with Netflix and Spotify and all the rest of it. No, it does seem that potentially other celebrities do pay for their own protection. But I suppose the question here is that what Prince Harry now is, a celebrity rather than a royal?
Oh, absolutely. He really surrendered that role as soon as he went to live in California. That was all over. And you're quite right. If Oprah Winfrey comes over here, do we get Scotland Yard to turn out a special squad to look after her?
Really, really interesting stuff there. But this whole battle with the tabloids, I mean, is that really the rift, the original sin within the royal family? Is that what sort of split Prince Harry from Prince William and the rest of them?
Well, if there's one person who knows about the media, it's certainly him, having done the Oprah Winfrey interview, defaming the rest of the royal family rather comprehensively, going on to Netflix, as you say, and Spotify, and then that disastrous biography that trashed the whole firm.
Well, no, it's a sad, sad case. But Nigel Cawthorne, royal biographer, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Now, we don't have left long on the programme, or indeed long left on the programme, so let's cross the channel for the final time and speak to Sophie Reaper, live there outside the Arc de Triomphe. What can we expect tonight in Paris?
Well, Tom, we're not far out now from that iconic opening ceremony, the thing that will kick it all off here in Paris. 10,500 athletes from 206 different nations who'll be competing in the Olympics. They will climb aboard boats and head down from one point at the Autolis Bridge, and they will travel around 6 kilometres up to the Eiffel Tower and the Trocadero, where Paris 2024 will be kicked off fully. Now, that will happen. The official time that they're expecting it to start is 24 minutes past 8. Now, that might seem a bit of a random time, but the reason for that is because that means on a 24-hour clock it will read 2024. How perfect for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. Now, this is, of course, the very first time in history that an opening ceremony will take place outside of a stadium. We talked, obviously, before. We're so familiar with seeing these opening ceremonies, spectacular as they are, inside stadia. But this time, for the first time ever, they're breaking all the rules here in France, and they're going to be having it coming down the Seine. I imagine it will be quite the spectacle. It absolutely won't be one to miss. So to all our viewers, make sure you're tuning in to get the chance to see not just Team GB, but all of the countries who are going to be competing in this year's Olympic Games.
Absolutely marvellous stuff, Sophie. Let's hope that the security can stay as tight as it needs to be, and frankly, that Brits can actually get there on time. Sophie, it's been a delight to be joining you throughout the afternoon today, and I hope that Paris brings you all that it can over the next few days. Sophie Reaper, thank you very much. Well, that's it from me today, but of course, much more to come on GB News. Martin Daubney will be bringing you live that press conference from Andy Burnham in Manchester. It is not to be missed. And you, of course, can see me again on Monday on this show, or if you're even eager, if you're more keen, then tune in on Sunday. I'm in for Michael Portillo on Sunday morning. But all of that to come. And as I say, Martin Daubney next. Thank you very much for joining us. Up next is the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.